All set.
Thank you. I'm coming.
Yeah, I'm watching.
All right.
Hey, Susan, can you get people to sign in when I kept you off?
All right. Hello, and thank you for joining us for the January 10th CB2 land use meeting. We have actually a packed agenda tonight. We have 3 items on the agenda, but first let me go around and introduce the committee members. Joining me online, Katie Bordenaro, the co-chair of CB2 Land Use. I'm Eugene Yu, co-chair of CB2 Land Use. We also have Bo Riccobono. And joining us online as well, Susan Kent, the chair of CB2. And then in the room, if we could just go around quickly. I see Donna Raftery, Susan Wittenberg, David Gruber, Sean Sweeney, public member, Frederica Siegel, Stella Fitzgerald. Who's waving in the back?
Anita.
And
Connor.
John Paul DeVerna just walked in. Carter
There as
Bruce. Janine Kiley, former CB2 chair. And did I miss anyone? I think that's everyone. If I've missed anyone, I do apologize. Also online, we have our district manager, Mark Diller. And on our agenda, we have 3 items. First is an update from, sorry? The first is an update from HPD. Oh, sorry, Michael Levine. We have also joining us online, a member of CB2 Land Use. Hello, Michael. So on our agenda, first we have an update from our friends at the Housing and Preservation Development Department for an update on 388 Hudson, the affordable housing project. We have an update on the community visioning items that have been happening in the last several months. And so they are here to present the results of the community visioning, the outreach, and a report that they are going to present back to the community. Second on our agenda, we are going to be discussing the City of Yes economic opportunity to finalize our resolution for the City of Yes zoning text amendment. And we also have joining us Council Member Chris Marte, who will be discussing the City of Yes and the possible impact or overlaps with the SoHo NoHo rezoning and the arts fund and the conversion fee for the arts fund. But first, let me see within our attendees, let's see if we have, could we actually elevate HPD to present? If you're here from HPD, if you could raise your hand, that will make it easier for us to just quickly elevate you. Great. I will start promoting some of you to panelists. So
I got it, Eugene.
Okay, great. So let's give Mark a minute or two to get everyone joining from HPD. And just as a matter of timing, we do have a lot of public members signed up to join the meeting and possibly to give testimony. So we will try and keep the meeting moving efficiently. We will probably get to the second agenda item close to the 8 or 8:30 mark. So just as a timing housekeeping item. So yes, I see Amy and Tyler, Michael, Melissa. Who should we turn it over to? Tyler or Amy?
Yeah, thank you, Eugene. You can turn it over to me if we're ready. Thank you very much for having us. We're excited to be here. My colleague James is gonna actually kick us off. I'm gonna share my screen, make sure that that works. Just 1 second here. Sorry, folks. Okay. Believe everyone should be able to see that okay, but please let me know if there's any issues. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to James to get us started.
Okay, thanks, Tyler. Hi, everyone. Let me know if you can hear me all right. So good evening, everyone, and Happy New Year. Thank you to the Land Use Committee of CB2 for having us tonight. My name is James Chikov, and I'm on the Borough Planning team, on the Manhattan Borough Planning team, joined by Director of Manhattan Planning, Melissa Otten, and our colleagues in pre-development and urban design, who you are most familiar with, Tyler Tishner and Amy Pivak. Our Associate Commissioner is also joining us this evening, Michael Sandler, and he will be available for questions as well. So HPD is excited to be kicking off 2023, nearing the RFP release stage of the 388 Hudson Street site. So we're looking forward to presenting to you our community visioning report back from all of our activities in 2023. Next slide, please. So just a quick agenda for this evening. We'll go through a review of the project background and what we've heard throughout the community visioning process, and we'll also talk about next steps. So I'll kick it off with some project background info for anyone who might be new to this process. The future development site is located on the corner of Hudson and Clarkson Streets, across from James J. Walker Park and adjacent to the west of City as School. Behind the development site, New York City Parks and the Hudson Square Bid are planning a future open space in a separate RFP and engagement process. And just for a quick history of the site was formerly a parking lot and it was acquired by the city in 2002 for water tunnel number 3 for an access shaft that is infrastructure that occupies the southern portion of the lot. And due to this infrastructure, that will become public open space so that it remains accessible to DEP. The remaining northern portion of the lot will be developed for affordable housing. And so throughout this engagement process, we've conducted outreach to community-based organizations, the community board, council member, and borough president's offices. There's been a project website and email, as well as online questionnaire submissions. We've conducted social media outreach and flyering, 7 local tabling events, and 2 workshops. And next slide, please. Our in-person workshop was attended by about 70 attendees, and we've been able to obtain a variety of feedback on project components like programmable ground floor space, and as well as conducting a new design activity on facade and transparency preferences. And next, here's some images from some images from that community visioning session that we held back in the fall. You can go to the next slide. So additional engagement that we've received 4 resolutions from Community Board 2, letters from the New York State Assembly member Glick and Senator Kavanaugh, and 3 letters from Village Preservation, as well as 1,000 emails from community members at large. And these are additional pieces of input that we will be incorporating within the RFP release. And we really appreciate the depth of engagement that has occurred with this community. And here is sort of a timeline of all the individual touch points through the totality of this community engagement period. just to highlight a few, we did tabling in the Lower East Side this summer, as well as the Union Square and Abingdon Square Green Markets. We've also conducted engagement both at, through flyering with community-based organizations and culminating in the fall with the 2 workshops, both in person and online. So, we're really proud to showcase this work that the team has put together throughout 2023 to reach the stage that we are today. And I'll hand it off to Tyler, who will discuss our findings from this community engagement period.
Thank you, James. Yeah, so you heard a bit about the engagement that we've conducted, but now we just want to share back what we've been hearing from you all in the community. So we've conducted engagement in a variety of ways, as James mentioned, conversations with community members at tabling events, hosting some workshops to go through activities. But our primary source of input has been from this project questionnaire that was posted both online on the project website and was also made available at the in-person tabling events as well as at the workshops. So in total, we received 542 responses to that questionnaire. 450 of these came from both online and the kind of asynchronous tabling events, and then 92 of them were filled out at the in-person and virtual workshops that we hosted. So in starting off, who did we hear from? So on the questionnaire, we had a few different questions aimed at kind of gauging who it is we're engaging with. First, we asked a question about the respondents' familiarity with this site in particular. As you can see, there was a very low percentage of people who had never even heard of this site at all. So most people were already aware of this project, aware of where this site was, with over 70% of them encountering it on a daily or frequent basis. We then asked about people's relationship to the area in general. As you can see, a vast majority of people said that they live here, while others said that they come here for work, or they visit friends and family, or they come here to do some shopping or dining, with a very small percentage who said that they are not sure or don't have one. When HPD does our community visioning, our real goal here is to provide robust, accessible, and inclusive engagement that reaches a wide variety of New Yorkers, but also targets our outreach to the local community who's going to be most impacted by this project. And to understand how well we accomplish that, we asked respondents for their zip codes. We received a total of 529 responses to this question, from 65 different zip codes across the city. 90% of those were actually from within Manhattan, while 76% of them were within zip codes that are 1 mile from this site. And over half of them actually came from the exact same zip code as this site, 10014. So now that we've heard a little about who we heard from, we're going to talk about the different types of questions we asked that are addressing this future development with issues of housing, the ground floors, as well as design. So we first asked about what kind of housing issues exist in the community, and we asked respondents to rank the issues they see as being the highest priority. And as you can see from the graph here, there was an overwhelming concern about the high cost of housing in the neighborhood, with 83% ranking it as their top issue. We also asked about who in the neighborhood is facing barriers. What groups of people have a hard time accessing and maintaining and keeping their housing? As you can see, we got a pretty varied answer here, showcasing that there's lots of different people who are struggling to find housing in this neighborhood or struggling to keep their housing. Some of the top answer choices were seniors and young adults and households with children and homeless families and individuals, really showcasing that everyone across the spectrum is having a hard time accessing housing in this neighborhood. We then asked about what type of housing would really be beneficial for the community at this site? And how could the housing best address those needs that we just talked about? So here we can see that 62% of respondents selected rental homes for both lower and moderate income households, emphasizing that there's a range and mix of incomes that really need to be served within this neighborhood. The next top two choices that were very close to each other were rental homes for lower income households alone and home ownership opportunities for moderate income households. So moving on from the housing portion of this project, there's also the opportunity that this development will have a non-residential ground floor, something that goes beyond just serving the residents of the building, but actually is a resource for the broader community. So again, a pretty varied answer here, lots of different preferences that we heard from the community. The top ones that stuck out was for a community or cultural space, somewhere that community members can gather and make connections with each other. And the second choice was for a grocery store, and particularly an affordable grocery store. Almost every time grocery store was mentioned, someone said that it needed to be affordable and not a luxury grocery store. So in addition to those questions I just went through, those were asked on all of our questionnaires for online tabling and at the workshops. But additionally, at the workshops, we went through some activities that were meant to elicit feedback about the potential design of the future building. And then we asked questions, had open-ended questions for the workshop participants to respond to. This was mostly focused on two aspects of the building's facade, or the outside kind of appearance. The first being transparency, which is essentially saying how much of the building wall is going to be windows and how much light is it going to allow the units inside and the homes inside the building to have. So you can see this image here on the screen, which is a composite image taken from both the in-person and virtual workshop. We had different tables and different breakout rooms, and people were asked to place dots on this board about where their preferences for transparency lay. And then we essentially laid all those images on top of each other to produce this hybrid of all the responses. And that's in addition to the open-ended question we asked, where people could provide their individual feedback about this. So as you can see, there was a really high desire for a medium to high transparency. People really liked this middle ground. They didn't want anything too far on either end. This correlates with large windows, or even leans towards these floor to ceiling windows, something that provides a lot of natural light for residents in the building. We didn't want, people were strongly against having either a glass curtain wall that creates a big glass building that's all reflective, or having small punched windows that don't allow any light for the residents. So the second part of the design preferences that we asked about was for the materials to be used outside of those windows. So this is the rest of the facade. Same image here. It's a composite of all those workshop activities put together so that we can see kind of where the overall preference lies. As you can see, there was an overwhelming preference for brick to be the material used in this building. Many people noted in their questionnaires that it should be at the base of the building, so that when you're at the pedestrian level, walking down the sidewalk, your experience of the building matches that of the surrounding context. Additionally, we also heard some preferences for concrete and metal. These were not mentioned as frequently, and when they were often noted that they should not be used by themselves, but should be mixed in with other materials to create like a more dynamic facade. And then lastly, with the workshop participants, we also just provided an open-ended question so they could share any other thoughts or ideas they had about the building's design with us. From those,
number of units.
Sorry. From those, we one thing that really stood out was kind of about the height of this building. Regardless of the various different feedback we got on height, pretty much everyone said that we needed to try to maximize the number of units within the building envelope, despite those variations in height preferences. There was also a lot of mentions about having setbacks and a design that tries to reduce the amount of shadowing on the neighboring J.J. Walker Park and other buildings across the street. And there was also some participants that really just preferred to have a lower or mid-rise building, something not quite so tall. Additional to that, we also heard just a really strong preference for a contextual design, something that blends in with the historic architecture of the West Village and respects the surrounding context, as well as the use of energy efficient materials for both the material choices, but also the building practices such as passive house design. Okay, and lastly, for both workshop participants and other questionnaire respondents, we just had an open-ended question that they could provide any other feedback, any other ideas that they wanted to share about this development. And some of the main themes that emerged from that was that the ground floor should be used or could be used as a grocery store because this neighborhood lacks access to affordable and fresh food. Also that the affordable housing should have opportunities available for seniors and young families, and that all the units should be accessible for people with disabilities, as well as there being a need for a mix of incomes to be served at this site, especially low to medium households. So you can see like these themes again echo and reflect what we saw in the earlier questions about lots of people are facing barriers to accessing housing in this neighborhood, and there's a need to serve a wide range of incomes. And then lastly, many people noted that this site was a rare opportunity for affordable housing in the neighborhood. And so we should do what we can to produce as much housing, affordable housing here as possible, while still making sure that we are respectful of the local and surrounding context. So really quickly, I'm just going to go over some next steps, where this project's heading. So we're wrapping up this community visioning part of the process. We started this back in April. Our workshops were in September, and we're just now coming to the report back, and then we'll be publishing the community visioning report. So all the information we've talked about today and that much more will be detailed in this CVR, or community visioning report, which we plan to publish in the next couple of weeks. We'll send out an email when that happens to let everyone know. So if you haven't, please visit our project website and make sure you sign up to get email updates. And additionally, it'll be available through that website, so everyone has access to view it. We are also now moving into the next phase where we are starting to draft the RFP. Again, the community vision report, which really outlines the community's priorities, is going to be attached as an appendix to that RFP. And we ask development teams respond to that in their project proposals. Once we issue the RFP, we'll then have a open request period to allow development teams to provide their proposals to us, at which point we will then move into our competitive review to figure out which of the proposals best fits and addresses the criteria of the RFP, including that community vision that's outlined in the CVR. At which point we'll designate the winning team, and then that project will continue on into pre-ULURP and the ULURP phase, coming back to the community board for more input as it moves through the public approvals. So to just briefly highlight what kind of criteria is included in the RFP, first and foremost, that thoughtful response to the community feedback in the CVR. It's attached, and we really pay attention to how well teams match their residential program and the ground floor non-residential uses with what the community's vision is for the site. Additionally to that, we have both requirements for our residential programs. We have certain programs that we use, and so development teams need to match those and accomplish what we're looking to accomplish on the site, and make sure the non-residential programs work as well. We also have criteria about the quality of the design and creativity of the buildings, as well as financial feasibility and the development team's experience. So that is the end of our presentation. I would like to thank the community board again for having us and providing some space for us to share this back with the community. And I will turn it back over to Eugene at this point. So thank you again.
Great. Thank you, Tyler, for a great presentation. It was good to see the results of the community visioning meetings, and it's good to see a lot of participation from the community in terms of their feedback and ideas. I'm sure the committee has some questions. I just wanted to open that up. I see Michael Levine has a question. So let me start with Michael, and then let's go to the room.
Yes, thank you very much for an excellent presentation and for an excellent summary. I'm just curious to know what percentage of participants mentioned as their desire for the ground floor non-residential use community facilities such as a gym. We thought that would be a high priority when we discussed it. It sounds as though not very many people reply that way. Can you tell us what the percentage was for that particular idea, a community facility on the ground floor?
Thank you for the question, Michael. That's certainly something that we've heard. We don't have an exact percentage only because that wasn't an explicit option included in the questionnaire. But we did often hear from people who filled out the questionnaire that when they referred to community space, they were referring to a non-residential gym. And we have taken note of that and have are including that in the CVR. We don't have an exact percentage, but it is noted that that was a very common theme.
Good. Thank you very much. Glad to hear that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. And then in the room, it's hard to see everyone. I see Sean and I see Frederica have their hands up. Why don't we start with, can we start with Frederica?
Sure. Tyler, you said that 53% of the respondents wanted a community or cultural space. So I interpreted that as the community center. And I think that we were pretty clear in our resolutions the importance of a community recreation center. I hope that will come across. Two questions. You're attaching the community visioning report to the RFP. Do you attach commentary to that, or it's just straight attachment without any editorializing on your part?
So the RFP is essentially a standalone report, and there is some narrative and some explanation of the findings throughout that report. Again, we plan to publish that in the next couple of weeks, so you'll have a chance to review that far ahead of when the RFP actually gets released. As far as in the RFP referencing it, we do, again, point the development teams to really address and pay attention to what the community's priorities and vision are of that CVR. We don't necessarily repeat any of the information in the RFP itself, but it is a part of the package when it's released, very much integral to the RFP itself.
Okay, because I took the results of that of the community feedback to mean that the community space was the most popular use of those floors. And I guess I want to ask the committee at some point, are we going to discuss tonight whether we want them to single out that use on the first 3 floors? So you're saying you're going to come back to us and show us the RFP before it goes out?
Unfortunately, we can't do that as part of our process. This is a competitive review, and for us to show anyone what's in the RFP ahead of its release could create a conflict of interest and an
Sure.
unfair advantage for
All right,
development
so,
teams.
so understood. So tell us when you'll be back to us next.
I'm not sure. So we will release the CVR in the next couple of weeks. We will be sure to let the community board know when that is released, and it'll be available on the project website. And then we will be drafting the RFP, which will probably be released in the next couple of months. I can't say that if we came back, we'd have too much more to report on during that time, just because the drafting of the RFP is a bit of a closed door session. As I said, we have to avoid any conflicts of interest or any unfair competitive advantage in the review process.
Thank you. Frederica, does that answer your
Yes,
question?
thank you.
Frederica. So I think next we had questions from Sean Sweeney.
Could you explain, you said there was a lot of requests for setbacks because that would create fewer shadows in the park. But wouldn't that the opposite be true? Because if you're having setbacks, the building would get taller and the sun is relative to the horizon over the years on a set plane. If it was a lower, bulkier building, which a lot of the buildings in that neighborhood are, wouldn't you have more sun more times of the year with a lower, bulkier building without setbacks?
Yes. So what you say is true. There is kind of just two different things to talk about there. There are setbacks and there is height. Obviously, regardless of how many setbacks you have, the height is going to be the ultimate factor. But again, we're not really designing this building. We will be putting some guidance in the RFP that essentially development teams can expect to follow as far as the site's going to be rezoned. But we're not trying to overly craft what this building is going to look like. We want to provide a flexible option and a flexible building envelope so that these teams can really become creative, because as I said earlier, one of the biggest things we heard is that people want to maximize units, but they also want to respect the local context. And so we're really looking for development teams and their architects to bring us creative, unique solutions about how best to accomplish those two competing interests.
And just to jump in a little bit there too, we are at the beginning of quite a long process. This will still be going through ULURP in the future. So at this point, the building is not designed. We do want to put some sort of guidance in the RFP so that way when teams respond, we can kind of compare similar proposals. But we really anticipate that the building could, evolve over time. And as it goes through the ULURP process, that is when a lot of these questions will really be finalized. So it's still a work in progress and will evolve over time.
Thank you. And Tyler, I have a question. Speaking about the setbacks, could you remind us what the current setbacks are in terms of what's required from the split of the lot with DEP? Is it 10 feet?
Yes. So DEP has been doing some advanced research, which is unique about this site. But they have given us some guidance that there might be some sensitivity to their infrastructure for digging into the ground, and there might need to be a setback from the lot line to help protect that. But we really won't know until people dig into the ground. Engineers are there to actually do the studies. This is just like some preliminary thoughts by them. And whatever team gets designated will be working with DEP very closely, going through that process to see what we can accomplish.
Understood. And so when you say shovels in the ground like that, so the actual number is probably it's subject to change, I guess, up to at what point in the process?
So it really, unfortunately, just we can't really know until somebody puts a shovel in the ground and uses that engineering expertise to really tell us what's happening and what's possible. So unfortunately, it won't really be until that phase starts, environmental review and construction starts to begin, that they can really know exactly what's possible. But again, there will be that environmental review, and throughout the public approvals process, there'll be some scoping done by the team to see what's actually possible, so that by the time something is approved, we know what can actually be done on the site.
Okay, thank you. Let me continue with questions from the committee, and just, I see that there's also some questions coming into the chat, and I think some people also have their hands raised. Just want to remind everyone that we'll through and get the rest of the questions from the committee and from CB2, and then afterwards we'll go to questions from the public. But please hold on to your questions, and if you have questions in the chat, please be sure to raise your hand during that time, because we'll be able to get to the questions. I don't want to lose your questions that are coming in from the chat. So I think David Gruber was next.
I want to reinforce, can you hear me all? I want to reinforce what my colleagues have talked about. As you know, in the entire CB2 district, there is no cold weather recreation uses. I'm surprised that that you haven't focused on that as part of this development project. And I'm disappointed at best. Also, it's been a main thrust of our council member, Eric Baccia, who wanted to have recreation at the base of this project. And I don't know why it wasn't highlighted and included in the questionnaire. So as we move forward with this, and you have other envisioning sessions, I don't know if you will or you won't, but that's an important thing, which I think HPD is glossing over. That's one comment I want to make. The second comment I want to make is throughout this entire process and before it, DEP has been reticent about sharing information with us. They seem to have said, this is what we need, and don't question us. We are DEP, these are the water pipes, and don't question us. Nobody is questioning the importance of safeguarding the infrastructure that DEP built and supervised. But I am questioning whether they need all that property. I am questioning whether they need the turning radiuses for trucks. I am questioning a lot of things, and they seem reticent to discuss it with us. They may be discussing it with you, but that doesn't help us because I don't. You're not going to share it with us either, I assume. So if we had more of a footprint, that would answer a lot of questions. And I'm not ready to just have it done by fiat, by DEP, without some explanation. And you have any feeling about that? Is it Tyler? Who am I addressing? Is it Tyler or
Yeah, I'm happy to provide some answers there. So to your first concern, we did see that community space and cultural space was the top answer in our survey. We do try to keep these questionnaires kind of standardized so that it is on even grounds for all of our projects. But along with that answer, we had lots and lots of comments about a recreation center, and that will be reflected in the CBR. It was the top choice, and recreation center was highlighted as part of that choice.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, but I don't understand that why there's a great need to have these standardized forms, especially, you know, when each site is unique and neighborhoods are different. Why standardization seems to be a priority. I don't understand that.
So we start from a standardized point and we try to make adjustments as we can, but often when we get started, we're not quite aware of this. You know, we try to come to the board and hear about what should be included on the questionnaire, but we only have so much space. We can't list everything, so we try to go with some categories that can capture.
It wasn't our reso, so it wasn't that. We're not springing it on you. Separate resos. And
Yeah, I think we've heard it as the top priority, and it's noted as the top priority in the report. And I just wanted to respond to the second part of your comment about the info you've requested from DEP and the need for the lot and the use of the lot, and just want to remind folks that there's no such thing as development of public land in New York City by fiat, based on the city charter. The development of this site will go through ULURP. We are currently talking about the results of a community visioning process for development that is years in the future, that will go through a competitive procurement process, and then we'll go through the city's ULURP process. And so there'll be lots of opportunities.
I've been on the board a long time.
Talk.
Michael, I didn't say development by fiat. Please don't put words in my mouth. I said that DEP has said they need that large piece of the property, and it seems that they've declared it by fiat. I didn't say that development is by fiat. I know exactly what I said. And so if you don't want to address that, it's okay. But I didn't say what you just said to me. I didn't say.
Sure. Apologies if I misunderstood. And yeah, I guess I would just note that we'll continue to have opportunities to discuss the project with HPD and DEP.
Thank you, Michael. And thank you, David. I'm trying to see is that another hand I see from Frederica? Your hand is up again.
Thanks for acknowledging that the community space was number one. And there is a page in your report that lists a supermarket at the top as if that was the first choice. So if you're open to edits, I'd appreciate if you take a look at that page and make sure that it reflects not only the results of your own surveys, but our resolutions. And the other thing I'd like to mention is that I'm on this committee and I'm on the Parks Committee, and throughout the entire process, when we were discussing the development of the park, there was great stress put on dividing the space with a straight line between the park square footage and the building square footage. And I think that diminishes the opportunities for creativity in the project. And I also think that if DEP needs to tell you that your building cannot encroach in certain parts of the land that's actually dedicated to the building, that they should be prepared to redraw the line between the park and the building and give back the square footage. You understand what I'm saying? If we can't use part of our building square footage, then give us some of the park square footage and redistribute it. If you need the access, you can put park over that part, not building. Thank you.
Thank you, Frederica. Janine Kiley.
Sure. I just have several questions. You shared the breakout for the ground floor uses. I'm curious if you took a look at that by the 70% of the respondents who live within 1 mile, or the 51% who live in the 10014 zip code. And I just keep adding my questions. It looks like nobody might know that answer. And then you, in the page that had the different comments on FAR and setbacks, you meant 22, 18, and 11 I saw were the number of comments. I'm curious, we had like almost 500 surveys. So is one of those numbers missing, or did very few people comment on the setbacks and the FAR? And my last thing is back to the DEP thing, because I do want to beat it because it's not a dead horse yet. On November 6, 2015, several of us in the room met with DEP representatives, several administrations back, and their proposal was to put a fence around the entire site. And I just want to know that CB2 has been fighting for this site for more than 25 years. I want to give out a shout out to Toby Bergman, who has really, he's a former chair, former CB2 member who has been the record on that. So we have been fighting to make sure this is a public use. So please accept our strong concerns about how big the footprint is for the building. And I just want to remind you that the DEP site in Hell's Kitchen, the building allotment goes up to the shaft lot line, and there is no setback. So I hope internally with the government conversations, you continue to push back on DEP, because if we didn't push back in 2015, none of us would be sitting in this room tonight. We just have a fence around an empty lot, which I know sounds ludicrous, but that was what an agency proposed. So my questions were on the breakout for the ground floor uses by location, and were there more comments on FAR and setbacks than the small numbers noted? And I do want to share, I'm not sure, I think there's zero, I do want to point out that there are 0 indoor recreation spaces open to the community in Community Board 2. And that's a fact. The opinion that the issue about grocery stores is frankly an opinion. And if you go on Reddit and other locations, you will see the #1 choice for recommending for new neighbors for affordable groceries nearby is Trader Joe's, which is 4/10 of a mile from 388 Hudson.
And I just want to point out, said in the comments that Trader Joe's is 2 blocks away. When I was listening to you, I was confused by that myself. I thought we have the best low-cost grocery store you can have, right? You know, right there.
It's also a market. The market will sell.
Okay. Thank you for all those questions. Let's see if I can remember as many of them as possible to get answers. Your first was about the looking at by area by zip code. We haven't dug down to that level just because our engagement is open to everyone across the neighborhood. We do weigh all of the feedback the same way. Everyone's voice has the same merit here. But we do, again, try to target people who live in the immediate area. And I think we could see from that zip code map that we were successful in doing that with the majority of people coming from very, very close to the site. But we do try to make it inclusive for everyone across the city, as anyone has an opportunity to live in this building and become a part of your community. The second question was about the comments on the FAR and setbacks. So those mentions that we talked about, those are just from the workshop participants. That's why they seem so low compared to the 400 or the 542. But those are actually just from the workshop responses. And then, your last question was about DEP. I certainly can't speak for DEP since they're not here, but they've been a great partner on this project. I know they can seem a little secretive. They're even secretive to us, but they really do have all of our best interests in mind. They are working with us to try to do what we can with this site while still protecting that infrastructure. I think many of you are familiar with Alicia West, who we've been working with. She has really been a great advocate for us on the inside there, really pushing, other people in the agency to be more flexible, to provide absolutely every inch they can so that we can get the best project possible at this site. I would encourage you, if you have more questions about that, the Hudson Square bid will be hosting some engagements, both an in-person and virtual one later this month. DEP will be there as a partner, so I would encourage you to attend those if you have more questions.
And definitely we hear the board loud and clear about wanting to learn more about, exactly what's buildable, exactly what's possible. And, our interest at HPD is to maximize the footprint and the size of this development. We've talked about that a lot, and we appreciate the board and your members thinking creatively and helping us come up with ideas. And so I think, we're partners on this, and we'll continue to be so, and we'll continue to kind of explore what's possible as we advance this project.
Thank you, Tyler, and thank you, Michael. Katie, I see you have your hand up, and I think I also saw Carter, hand up for. Katie, do you want to go?
Okay, I just want to say one thing that surprisingly we haven't talked about yet tonight, but I think it's been one of the most, and the thing that we've heard the most about is this question of permanence. We've discussed it over and over again, but I don't think that we can underline it or underscore it or put it in bold enough for you. And if there is anything new you have to say about the assurance guarantee of permanence, that would be great, or just even just a brief review.
Thank you, Katie, for the question. We certainly have dug even deeper into our affordability mechanisms. I actually have a slide that I'm going to share very quickly, just so it'll help us talk through all of this. Sorry, give me 1 second here. Okay, I think everyone can see that. So bear with me, because this is a very complicated and like lots of different things happening to make sure that we can ensure permanent long-term affordability. So there are several different mechanisms that we rely on. The first being a regulatory agreement and our land disposition agreement. This is an agreement made between HPD and the development team that we designate. This agreement sets out all of the required rents based on AMIs for the different units, and it applies to every unit within the building. These are typically, for a city-owned land, start with at least a 60-year initial term. At the point that that expires, we have other mechanisms that ensure that these teams come back to us. They are required to extend for another term under conditions that apply to all the units again. And the way we do that, through the second mechanism, which is a type of deed restriction called the extended affordability reverter. So this is essentially a clause on the deed that states if the development team elects not to extend and renew their regulatory agreement for another 60-year term, then the land and any improvements thereon return back to city ownership. So this is kind of the big mechanism that we rely on to make sure that no matter what happens down the road, the city can ensure that this project stays viable, stays affordable, and continues to serve the community. So that's kind of the main mechanisms. But in addition to those, there are other mechanisms that help put protections here, just kind of layering on top of one another. So another deed restriction will be placed on this property, which is the mandatory inclusionary housing requirement. So anytime there's a substantial rezoning that produces a significant amount of housing, it's required that an MIH, or mandatory inclusionary housing overlay, is put on top of that property, which requires a standard requirement of 20 to 30% of the entire floor area of the building be required to remain affordable permanently. Since this is a city-owned site that's going to be receiving city subsidy, we require an additional 15% floor area on top of that standard requirement. So for the total MIH requirement, we'll have 35 to 45% of the building falling under that regulation. Now, again, this is just in addition to the already the requirement of the regulatory agreement, which is protected by the extended affordability reverter, which applies to 100% of the building, every unit in the building for all time. In addition to that, we also have incentives that help ensure that development teams follow this route. We used to rely on these more. We've since developed these stronger tools, but we leave those in place as an extra layer of kind of defense. So we have loan and finance terms, what's called a balloon mortgage. So essentially the funding and subsidy that HPD provides is in this balloon mortgage structure, which means that all payments on the loan, including any interest, are deferred until the end of the regulatory period. So at that point, with all those deferred payments, you're looking at tens of millions of dollars due if the development team elected not to renew. Again, this is only in addition to that reverter clause, which requires that they do so or they lose the property. So not only would they lose the property and the improvements, the building would come back to the city. They would also owe tens of millions of dollars on that property to the city. So a very, very strong incentive to keep development teams from renegotiating with us on an agreement and extending the affordability. And then lastly, something that everyone I think is more familiar with is just the state's rent stabilization laws. So those apply to all the units. They make sure that all the units in this building will be rent stabilized. It controls how much that rent can go up year over year from the Rent Guidelines Board. And as of 2019, there is no way to remove a unit from rent stabilization. It will remain permanently a part of this property for as long as the building stands. So I know that's a lot. If there's anything you'd like me to clarify, please let me know, but I hope that provides a little bit more clarity about how we ensure that permanent affordability.
Thank you, Tyler.
Tyler, on that, can you walk us through a little bit for example? So this building, under the regulatory, the entirety of the building would be affordable. And then after 60 years, what happens next?
Okay, so under theoretical situation, as this building ages and is in operation for several years, things change, different maintenance costs are incurred, and the building is probably going to need new financing to keep it viable. So that's when teams come back to HPD and they say, hey, we have this building, it needs some additional funding to keep up with maintenance and operation costs. And so they renegotiate this regulatory agreement with us based on the needs of the building and the resources available at the time. Again, that extended affordability reverter just ensures that teams have to do this. It does not provide them the opportunity to try to remove this building from affordability or the portion thereof that they could and try to go market with it. This deed restriction prevents that. And so essentially they'll come back, we'll agree to a new regulatory agreement, and there'll be another 60-year term that they're held into.
And the regulatory agreement's terms are the same as they are when the building is first constructed and 100% affordable?
So it would be 100% affordable. I can't say for certain the terms would be exactly the same. It will be 100% affordable, but changing AMIs over the years, changing financial situations and costs may shift the structure of the rent slightly. Again, we would follow the Department of Housing, Urban Development, which is the federal agency that sets the AMIs. So we would be following those regulations, but it is possible there would be some adjustments so that instead of this building not being able to pencil out financially and then not really being viable as 100% affordable housing, we can make those adjustments if necessary, so that this building remains affordable.
And Tyler, could I just add a little more there? You know, the regulatory agreement, this initial regulatory agreement will govern all of the units in the building, which again is 100% affordable. The regulatory agreement is going to lay out 1 million rules that the owner will have to follow to meet the city's standards, and is going to lay out very specifically for every unit in the building, the specific incomes that are eligible for that unit and the rents that are associated with that income. I think what Tyler was saying is that 60 years from now, when we're renegotiating that agreement, I don't think we can say right now that the exact AMIs would stay the same in like a new agreement, and they might respond to the incomes that are actually in the building. So like if when we're renewing this regulatory agreement, actually all of the residents in this building have much lower incomes in relation to the city's area median income at the time, we might want to change those affordability requirements to better match the needs of the current residents to make sure that those residents are able to stay in affordable apartments.
Okay, thank you. I just want to give a quick time check. We're about at the hour mark into the meeting. We will be going to the public session soon. And just a quick note to the public, since we have a lot of interest in this meeting, in this topic, there are a lot of attendees. We will be asking people with questions to limit their questions to 1 minute, so that we can get to everyone that has questions. Going back to the committee, are there any other guests? Carter Booth.
Yeah, so my question was with respect to feedback on the RFP. I don't think we were asking to see a draft of the RFP in private. So I'm not sure how that creates a conflict if you make a draft public for comments.
That's right.
That was a question, even though it may have sounded like a statement.
It did sound like a statement. We will be releasing the RFP to the public and the development teams when it's ready for release. I think if you know, all of our RFPs are on our website, you can go look and see the standard structure for requests for proposals. And if you have any,
my point was looking at a draft, if there's anything that we might further refined, right? To be both the objectives of your agency as well as the community board, or even the elected or anybody in the public.
understand the ask. We will not be sharing a draft of the RFP. We'll be releasing the RFP itself, and then the project that's selected through that RFP will go through a very extensive community review process.
And then the second question is, our board, the public, various groups, you know, there's a lot of interest in design excellence in this project, and design excellence is an open term, right? You know, without getting into it, but the idea being that, you know, if it were a brick building, if that were the case, that it's not just some monochromatic brick building that looks like it could be anywhere, but one that is more contextually perhaps designed, and that's also open. But is there a way that the RFP can capture that sentiment that might bring more people into responding to it in order to accomplish that?
So we do, yes, include a lot of guidance about design excellence. That's one of the benefits of going through this process, is that we really get to vet how design is considered in this building. We don't just want to build a giant square brick building for affordable housing. We want a beautiful building that people are thrilled to be living in. The community is thrilled to have coming in on their streets and can be proud of. So we provide, first and foremost, a specific design guidelines for this site. Those are things that we write based on the input we've received and the feedback we've gotten, and we put those first and foremost so that teams understand what the community is looking for and what we're looking for at this site. In addition to those, we have a whole list of different things. There are design guidelines for multifamily new construction, climate resiliency design guidelines, universal design, active design. We have all of this outlined for teams to be paying attention to ensure that the designs and the architecture they're putting forward is of the highest standard. I hope that answers.
Yeah, that does, and I think that those other issues, but what I'm very specifically, you know, from the tables to the board to public comments, the issue is that this is at a crossroads of a lot of different areas, including, you know, historic district leading into a very different district, old printing district, et cetera. I'm just wondering if you address that specifically here, or if that's just a set of standards that, you know, you put in most RFPs.
Well, I would say we care a lot about design excellence across all RFPs and do really care about that as a principle. And I think, you know, we really stand behind the design of projects that are selected through this process. That said, to your question about the site, we recognize that this is a very important and prominent site and care particularly about design excellence for this site, and will include requirements in the RFP that speak to that.
Thank you.
I just wanted to add just a tiny bit of context addition to that. Because I worked on some of the analysis of the design comments, and so like they're going to be incorporated within the community visioning report on the specific type of like materials and transparency questions that came out of the workshop. So those are definitely a part of it. But also during the pre-ULURP phase, where after we've designated a developer, there's a whole design consultation process, and we'll be coming back to the community board for additional feedback on the design of the project. So it's not like, you know, you'll see it once during RFP and then again at ULURP. There's a whole extensive sort of pre-ULURP phase where we're in constant conversation with the community board.
Great, thank you. If there are no other questions, I just want to do a quick check from the committee and from other CB2 members. Is that a hand I see on the left?
Yeah, sorry, I got it. So you said it's gonna be a number of years, and I'm of childbearing age, so let's say I have anywhere one.
Could you step up to the table?
Yeah, they do.
Close to the microphone.
That is I guess, fetus, it could be an HP question. I agree with the output side. Maybe it's funny, I don't know, I'm just curious, there's gonna be a number of years.
Why don't we have
And I'm 34 now, so I was just curious if I should choose to defrost my embryos, et cetera, et cetera. Does that increase my
I'm
house
sorry,
size?
I'm sorry, who's asking, who's speaking?
I'm just, when we heard in the meeting.
public session, we need to be called on.
Oh, I have to go off on camera?
No, well, that ideally.
Sorry, we haven't started public session yet.
Oh.
I was checking to see if, sorry, we were just making sure we have,
Public meeting.
The person getting to
that's
be,
fine.
that has to be the person.
It's.
Okay. If there,
And then, so then the second part of my question.
No, wait, just wait, are we always in that? Yes.
sorry. Okay, so if there are no more questions from the committee, then let's go to questions from the public. Again, we're gonna have a 1-minute timer. There should be a timer on screen. Mark, is that something that we can? And I can also keep track of the time, but I will also give a quick reminder at like the 10-15 second mark, so we can wrap up comments. But since we have,
For people in the room, go to this chair, because you need to be at the table to be heard. So when you are called, come sit in the chair, just vacate it, and then you can speak, and we can all hear you.
yes, and so why don't we do this where we have, and the question, the 1 minute is for testimony. So why don't we take the first several questions online, and then we'll switch over to the next set of questions for people in the room. Again, if you can, why don't we switch this? Why don't we go with in the room first? So if you can raise your hand and go to the, there should be a seat open at the table. And just state your name, and we'll give you a minute for testimony.
Probably just go ahead. Just.
Yes, hi, I'm Toby Bergman. As Janine noted, I've been involved in this for one way or another for 27 years. I think that the way I see this, the most important thing to happen right now is to get as much land as possible. DEP has been resistant to giving up land since the very beginning, not since the beginning, because they wanted to make a deal to give up the land initially. And I can explain briefly why, but we need to know what that line is, and it should be give as much space to the project as possible, because that goes in the RFP, and once it's in the RFP, nobody can submit a proposal that's beyond that line. So it's really important that HPD enlist the community to help you to get that line as far as possible. The tunnel itself is 500 feet below ground. This project is not going to affect the tunnel. The question is where the pipes are, where the access points are, and how close to that can be built, and if there can be if the building can be projected over that through a cantilever, because that's what determines how much space is available given whatever zoning is used to make this possible. Just wanted to mention for the information of HPD, because you may not know it, that in the very beginning, DEP actually enlisted, I was working for the Parks Department at the time, wanted the Parks Department to request that this site would be used for a park after DEP was finished with the site. And the reason they did that is because there was a private property owner who owned that land. DEP could have built this under the street bed as they did, for example, on Gansevoort Street and other places around the city. But they preferred to build it on this site, but they couldn't get the site unless it could be taken from them. It was a private owner who wasn't going to give up the site, but the only reason he had to give up the site, was forced to give up the site, is because it was going to be used for needed public purpose. So that gives you leverage to make a very strong case to DEP. And it's not just some person in office in DEP says, oh, this is as far as you can go. They have to show that to you. They have to prove that to the community.
Thank you, Toby.
So enlist the community on your behalf to get as much as possible, because I assume you want to build as much housing as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Toby. Next two in the room, and then we'll switch over to take the next three from online.
How you doing? I'm Scott Evans. I live in the village. So I'm not sure if it's intentional or not, but it seems to be silent on the design guidance related to the height of the building. And I know that there's been considerable discussions, not only in the public design and in this community board 2 meeting on public, like the statements, where a lot of people want to make sure there is alignment with the aesthetic and the height in that area, right? In the print, commensurate with the printing house. How are you guys addressing that? I mean, if you're going to go out there and have a design guidance where, say, build a 31-story tower, you're going to kind of mislead some of the folks. And a lot of folks I know, and I'd love to know if you have like information or a cut on that of folks that live within 1 mile, what their feedback was on the height of the building. So do you have feedback from people from 1 mile away, within the site on their items related and feedback on the height of the building? And how are you addressing it in the design guidance on the height of the building?
Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Tyler, I don't know if you want to address that.
Yeah. As far as looking at the responses from residents from a particular geographic area, we haven't really drilled down there. Again, everyone who has engaged with us, their voice matters, and we're weighing all those the same. For the height,
but you said some folks that live closer would have more weight. That's what I'm just trying to make sure I'm using your own words for you. And how that, so if you can get a cut, that'd be good.
Yeah, go ahead, Amy.
Just to hop in, I don't think we're saying that people who live closer have more weight, but I think that the intent of the locations of where the outreach was done, the folks we have really focused on reaching out to are folks who live within the neighborhood. So we've talked a lot with the community board, we flyered in the area, we tabled in the area, and talked to local community-based organizations in the area to make sure we're capturing many folks from that really local area, but there's no separate weighting to the actual feedback we get.
So how are you addressing the height in the RFP?
Do you want to start, Tyler, or do you want me or someone else to jump in?
So in the RFP, we'll be providing some general zoning guidance of what development teams can expect for the rezoning that this site will have to go through in the public approvals process. So we're taking the feedback we've heard from the community through the engagement from the community board, from the council member, and we're weighing all of that to determine what we want to provide guidance on. Now, again, we're not designing the building, and this is not the final zoning district, as this project will have to go through the ULURP process, and that will be the ultimate determination. But based on the input and the feedback we've heard, we will be pursuing a taller building here. This is a unique opportunity to provide affordable housing in Lower Manhattan, and we've heard a strong preference to pursue maximizing affordable housing at this site. And because of that, we will probably be putting forth a somewhat taller building at this site.
Okay, I guess my question was, how did you summarize the feedback to reflect that a taller building is what the design guidance should be? It doesn't sound like you've provided any data to that effect.
So just to kind of keep this meeting moving, I'd like to ask that we not do a whole cute back and forth, but thank you for your question, Scott.
Is there another person in the room who wants to ask the question? No one else in the room, Luigi.
Okay, we'll take the next three from online. So first is Andrew Berman. And then after will be Victoria Hillstrom and then Linda Franklin. So Andrew, you can speak. If you'd like, I can promote you.
I promoted all three, thanks.
Okay.
It's small of the building, and more money they get.
All right, Andrew.
Hi. Yes, thank you very much. So actually my question is overlaps a bit with the last question, which is I'm a little confused by how this shows feedback from the public, because as you yourselves admit, the largest source of feedback you received were letters and emails, and none of what you showed seems to reflect what those letters and emails said. Now, I know that through our organization, you received close to 2,000 emails, which we shared with you directly. And virtually all of those said that they wanted a building that was commensurate with the height of the buildings around it, that setback only from J.J. Walker Park, and things of that nature. And I don't see that reflected, the J.J. Walker Park, yes, but the height of the building and getting rid of the tower, I don't see reflected anywhere in this document. So how exactly does this reflect the community feedback you've received? It actually seems to ignore it rather than reflect it.
Nice.
Yeah, we've really heard quite a range of feedback. I understand, certain groups are really focusing on certain things, but we have heard quite a variety of feedback. Early on in this process, we heard from the community board that they wanted to push for more housing here. They were interested in really capitalizing on this really great opportunity, which we don't have a lot of in this area, to help address this housing crisis that we're in. So we have heard really a variety of feedback, and it is difficult to really make everyone happy. It's going to be tough. It's going to be difficult. We're going through a difficult process. We understand that there are different opinions and that we have different goals here.
But you're supposed to be summarizing the feedback you received.
Exactly.
The
community visioning report
reflected in there anywhere.
Yeah,
Regardless of whether or not you agree with it, you seem to be pretending it doesn't exist.
No, we're not, and we understand the comment, and the community visioning report will mention the letters that we received from Greenwich Village Preservation and summarize their contents.
And the 2,000.
We understand that there's a very large contingent.
2,000 individuals who also wrote.
Yeah,
you,
sorry, that's what I meant. That's what I meant a second ago when I
you
mentioned the
received.
letters, Andrew. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but yeah, a second ago when I said that the community vision report will talk about the letters they received, we'll summarize their comment. We understand that there is a very large contingent in the community that is sensitive to building height and design, and the community visioning report will include information about that.
Okay, thank you, Michael. And thank you, Amy. Thank you, Andrew. Next, I believe it's Victoria.
Hi, everyone. This is Victoria Hillstrom. Thank you for having me. As I said in the chat, we are in Tribeca on North Moor, and we feel like this is our backyard. It's a little bit stunning that it falls into CB2. I would just like to say to HPD very strongly that we, as the residents, adapted industrial buildings to residential code, impacting design and architecture around the world. We understood the scale, the height. We found beauty in industrial buildings that were really abandoned and in quite disrepair. And we've taken these old industrial buildings and built iconic neighborhoods filled with affordable housing where we live and work. And so I would just like to say to HPD, take it down a notch. We understand how to build affordable housing and offset it with luxury retail. We understand better than anyone. This is the best community board in New York. And you have real experts, really very talented people on this line. So when we speak, you need to listen because we don't want you messing up our neighborhoods. We have something to contribute. And it's really offensive, as Andrew Berman said. We have participated. We are the stakeholders. And I am just a bit taken back that this community board has been so disregarded and HPD is acting as if we're Neanderthals. We are who developers hire. We are the designers and the architects. We have something to say. So I really just want you to understand that this has really been very, very in very poor taste. And I'm very disappointed. We found this lot to build 100% affordable housing. We sold this deal to the city and you're not listening to us. It's really very offensive. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Victoria. I believe next is it Linda Franklin?
Yes. Hi, this is Jeff Franklin, Linda's not better half. And as a financial guy all of my life, my question focuses on the finances of this building, and it has to do with the annual financial cash flow. My question is, the annual financial cash flow of this building, is it A, required, B, expected, C, hoped, or D, none of the above, to be equal to the operating expenses of the building plus a sinking fund for the longer term repairs that the building will need, like the elevator every 15 to 20 years?
Thank you. And I guess just to quickly answer the question, or answer the question as quickly as possible, the city's capital subsidy in the construction of the building will be sized such that the operating income from the affordable rents from the low income tenants of the building is enough to pay for the ongoing expected maintenance of the building and capitalize a reserve fund to pay for long-term improvements like you mentioned. So I think that answers the question. You know, the building isn't designed yet. We'll be asking development teams to submit proposals that include a financing plan based on HPD's affordable housing finance programs.
I'm sorry, just to make sure that I understand your answer. So what you're saying is, if the rents do not equal the annual operating expenses plus the sinking fund, then the city will make up the difference from tax revenues.
That's actually not quite what I was saying. I was saying that the city's initial subsidy into the construction of the building would be sized such that it would lower the amount of private debt needed to make sure that the operating income of the building pays for its ongoing maintenance. So it's a little bit more complicated than as described. So we won't be paying ongoing operating subsidy to the building. We'll be paying for the initial construction of the building through large loans and capital subsidies, as well as low-income housing tax credits and other sources that are balanced to ensure that the income can pay for the operations of the building.
Thank
So
you,
the answer,
Michael.
so the answer,
I'm sorry, I'd like to ask that we don't have back and forth.
Why not?
Because we have a lot of people online and we have 1 minute limit on questions. It's really more of a testimony. So I think you've already had one back and forth. If we could move on to the next three online, Josephine Conti, Alec Perchance Nikki, and then John. Okay, Josephine. If Josephine's not ready, can we move to Alec?
Can you hear me?
Is that Josephine?
Yes.
Yes. Why don't you go ahead?
Okay. My issue is I live in the West Village. I've lived here most of my life. I'm 69 years old. Right now, my daughter lives with me with her 2 children. She desperately needs housing. And I've been an old, person who's been in the village forever. My parents were founding members of the BBC, the Bedford Barrow Commerce Street Block Association. I think because I know New York City very well, I was born and raised also, in Manhattan. And there is a lot of affordable housing in other neighborhoods. There's almost none here. My point is I think that this should be relegated to preferably village people because I do live in rent regulated housing at the moment, but the landlords are intolerable. And and then my second need is my daughter needs a place. She has 2 children, they're 12, they don't have enough room. I have a small apartment, 460 square feet. And I think, I'm not trying to be selfish, but I also wanted to make the comment that making it a little bit higher, it doesn't mean it's going to be horrible, but it will encompass more housing. But I think we need to, it is in Greenwich Village. And so I think we need to think about that. I'm not in the backyard of this project. I'm in the area of this project, and I'm sure there are many others who have the same needs. And this, I'm trying to speak for everybody. I think that people in 114 should be given some preference. And that's what I have to say.
Thank you very much. I think next we have Alec.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, hi, my name is Alec Puchnicki. I live on Perry Street, about 10 blocks from the site. I have my own co-op, and so I'm fortunate that way, but the thing that's hanging over all our heads is the housing crisis in New York as a whole, and not just in the village with affordability issues, but issues all over the city. But in terms of maximizing the space for apartments in the building, one question that's come up a few times is the Dapolito Center, which is 1 block away. Is this been completely written off? If you're going to spend 3 floors of the new building for a community center, which sounds like an excellent idea, what about a community center that is a block away and would be renovated by, I don't know which agency, I don't know how much it would cost?
Thank you for that question. I believe that's actually an issue and a question for the parks. It's a parks issue. Dapolito is under the control of the Parks Department. So that is a parks issue. But I would like to ask HPD, just going back one question to Josephine's question or comment about the lack of housing in the village. If you could speak a little bit about community preference and how that works for this project and other affordable housing projects that the city puts forward.
Yes, the city does currently have a community preference policy that gives a preference for 50% of the housing units in a new development for residents of the community district in which the project sits. That policy is currently under a years-long litigation, so we can't comment further on community preference, but that policy is currently being challenged in court.
Okay, thank you. I wasn't aware that there was being challenged right now. Okay. And then I think the next question, John, thank you for being patient. I see you online.
Thanks, Eugene. John Mudd here. A quick question. I'm sorry I joined late. It's going to be partially affordable and partially regular rents? Or is it?
100% affordable,
It's
all
definitely
affordable.
okay. And then there's always the question, what's affordable? And there's a developer behind it, correct?
Not yet. We're starting the process and we're going to put out this request and then development teams will respond and then one will be chosen. So we're not to that point of having chosen anyone quite yet.
Okay, but usually there's the usual bandits that are around doing the development. So yeah, I think what's happening is policies haven't changed here, and like most of them says, I'm with them. You know, it's desperate here. I mean, I see it on the streets. I see it everywhere. I see it. People call me, tenants call me when protections, the rent controlled people are being pushed out of the housing. It's desperate. And if we don't really pay attention and really curb this will not curb it, but it's at least it's very important to at least go in the right direction and change some policies, some ideas about development, and the city's development policies are all wrong. We're not working for the people for sure, and so I plead to really think about these other alternatives, you know, nonprofits getting involved, ownership, community ownership, CLTs. There's lots of ways to do this and start to bring it back into the hands of the public, and without getting a developer to own it and feed him money. And I know you guys do work in earnest a lot of, but you're guided by policy. And anything you can do to change the idea of development would be wonderful.
Do you represent an organization?
I represent Midtown South Community Council. So what you guys got going here is important all around the city. Okay, it's what this housing is important, and nobody's building housing. We're 988 rent controlled and rent stabilized, and I guarantee you 50% of them are being forced out of their housing. And we got you know, you see what happening with the homeless crisis and NYCHA. They're wanting to take over NYCHA. They're wanting to, developers want to grab NYCHA and wants to move them out, and they want to end public housing. And in a sense, what you talked about earlier had a hint of public housing, how public housing operated, you know, that it would be taken care of through a fund. So I think we all need to get together and help each other, and that's what I'm here for. I hope I help.
Can I respond quickly just on some of those points?
Sure, Amy.
Yeah, so just wanted to say that I appreciate what you said. And it was several years ago now that HPD has instituted a new policy where at least 25% of the building ownership of any of our public sites does have to be through either a not-for-profit or a minority or women-owned business. So it's not 100%, but we do have a requirement that at least a nonprofit or an MWBE is involved in all of our projects. And then additionally, there was something else you said that I wanted to respond to as well. Oh, we also always permit CLTs as part of the proposals, and that is mentioned in the RFP, that if folks want to propose a CLT, they are more than welcome to do so.
Okay, great. Thanks, Amy.
Thank you, Amy. All right, I think the next question is from Peter Brereton in the public. So Peter, you should be permitted to speak. go ahead when you're ready. You are muted.
Hi there. My name is Peter Brereton. I'm an area standards representative for the New York City District Council of Carpenters. And I was just curious if the developers are going to need to have labor standards written into the agreements, so the people who actually build the building have a chance to live there.
Good question. Thank you, Peter. I don't know, Tyler, Amy.
Michael, is that something you can speak to?
Sure, yeah. Our projects will be financed using HPD standard affordable housing finance programs, which require living wage for contractors and employees.
And who determines what the living wage is?
I would need to follow up. I don't know the full details on the wages of
The reason I
construction
bring it up
workers.
is it's a race to the bottom in construction. The people building the buildings right now are all underpaid. There's no training, there's no labor standards, all in the affordable housing market. So it's a problem. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter.
Thank you, Peter. Okay. Are there other questions? Please go ahead and use the raise hand function.
I don't see any hands.
Don't see any. I do see one. Oh, Roy. Hi, Roy. Let's go ahead and promote you.
Yep.
So just promoting Roy Riz to ask his question, and welcome, Roy.
My question to HPD is about the affordability component, and if there has been a thorough study about the AMI that it is going to design its affordability after. Has there been a study of the demographics of the area, either the immediate area or CB2, so that the affordability reflects that? Because there hasn't been a lot of explanation as to what type of AMI it's going to use. So, half of it or the other permanent.
Yeah, we've included some demographic information in our outreach materials, which are on our website, and the RFP itself will also include community demographic information. The exact incomes for this project have not been selected. We'll be asking for proposals that maximize affordability and that bring deep affordability and to the project. This community is actually quite wealthy. It's one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in New York City. So we will not be asking for projects that reflect the existing demographics of the West Village community, but rather that bring affordability that allow for low income and extremely low income New Yorkers to move to the West Village community.
Good, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Eric Chu. So let me promote you, Eric. And then if there are any other people from in the room, please come to the table and we can take your questions after Eric. So Eric Chu.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm a architect with BKSK Architects. I heard a lot about high quality design. I had a question about the open space adjacent, and I know there was an answer in the chat, which I appreciate. I was just wondering, is there any mechanism to coordinate the design or take advantage of that open space?
So these will be separate RFP and design processes. The timeline for the open space is a bit shorter than our timeline. Our project's a little more complicated, but we certainly will be looking for teams to respond to the fact that there will be open space there, and to have creative and unique ways of creating connections with that space, so that it feels like the whole site is master planned and can flow from one space to the other, particularly since this building will have ground floors that serve the broader community, like the open space.
I appreciate that, but if they're being separately run, how do you actually encourage that?
So yeah, we do have conversations and we check in rather frequently. We attend events together. We check in with the bid and Parks a lot, who's running the process. So they check in with us for updates as well. So I think one of the things we do plan to put in our design guidelines is for teams to be aware that this open space is coming and to think about it carefully as they craft their proposals. But we are coordinating and we talk as things progress.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right, in the room, are there any other questions from the public? No? Okay.
Eugene, can I ask a question? John?
John
Did you
Paul?
ever speak about in any of the paperwork about the size of the units they're trying to put in?
Sorry, so the question is about the size of the units?
Yeah.
Yeah, Tyler, I think you could talk about maybe when in the process that occurs in terms of, I guess, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms versus studios. Is that the question you're asking, John?
I'm gonna actually answer it later on in the process. I didn't need to. I'm just, the height of the building is obviously very important to the community, and it seems like HPD, despite those repeated requests to keep it inconsistent with the character, is already declaring it has to be tall versus has to be fully built out with as many affordable units. And so that's why I thought it would be more important to have that information now. But it makes sense to have it later on. But again, just because you want a lot of housing doesn't mean it has to be tall.
Right.
Yeah, you can have a building full of studio apartments.
So I wouldn't just make that decision just yet.
Right.
Right.
If I could just quickly respond to that. So there is the HPD design guidelines for new construction that all developers have to follow when submitting to the RFP submission. And in that, there are minimum kind of a range for square footage per different types of units. So you can check that out. That's on the HPD website and it's publicly available. But like I said earlier, there's also that like design consultation process where there will be iterations to bedroom sizes, et cetera. The building will have to go through a thorough consultation even after the RFP process as well.
Do you just want to note that, we heard about a demand for housing for a wide range of populations and including families and people with children. And so the building will not be all studios to the comment that was made.
Great, thank you. I think I earlier saw Andrew Berman's hand raised. I just want to circle back to Andrew, see if he had that an additional question.
Yes, it has to do with the question of the permanence of the affordability. 2 related things. When this was being spoken about before, it was stated that the MIH requirements for 20 to 30% permanent affordability applied to 20 to 30% of the entire building. But isn't it in fact true that the non-residential portions of the building, that 20 to 30% would not apply? And then I also want to ask, in this presentation, you say 60 years for the term. At other times, you've said 40 years, you've said 30 years. Why is that number such a moving target? And will you provide some more detailed documentation so that we can all examine exactly what the nature of these agreements are that you're talking about and how they would work?
I can address, I can address at least that first question. I'm sorry, I may have misspoke. The MIH requirement only applies to the residential floor area of the building. So yes, the non-residential uses will be excluded from that. Michael, I can let you take the second question.
Yeah, sorry, on this second question, I think in the past we've spoken generically about regulatory agreements and what they are. We don't have a regulatory agreement. There's not a proposed project. There's not a proposed development team for this project. I think based on the questioning that we've received, we've clarified to the community that for a public site of this size, we would be asking for at least a 60-year initial term for a regulatory agreement. The project will go through ULURP. There will be a variety of public approval documents governing the affordability here, and all of our documents are public documents and will be public documents, but there is not a regulatory agreement at this time to make public.
Can I ask a question?
Hi, Anita.
Thank you. Regarding the footprint of the building and the interaction between the DOT and HPD, is there any way that we could greatly expand the footprint? Everything having to do with the height is almost inverse relationship to the footprint. So I can easily see creative solutions where you cantilever over, you have sections cut out. It could be quite beautiful, quite dramatic, maybe not the cheapest, but if you're adding enough square footage to the affordable units above, you could go beyond a tower. For example, the building done by the Chicago architect over the High Line, and it was twisted. And I mean, I'm just thinking outside the box, and this is sort of like a graveyard of pipes and has been for many, many, many years. And it's what's convenient for them, but it's not convenient for the community. And there's so many alternatives as to, especially thinking of it as an entire property and not having this odd artificial line that really, you can sell off one. I think that's the main advantage, is that you have them divided already, but I don't think we prefer, obviously, to have a bigger footprint, a shallower building, and something really fun and creative.
Well, we love fun and we love creativity too. So appreciate the sentiment there. And I think, we will be asking teams to submit proposals that maximize the number of affordable housing units that respond creatively to the community feedback, which we understand clearly some great sensitivity to building height and to design that minimize the impact of any height that there is. So that's where we'll be heading on this. The infrastructure that is on the southern portion of this lot serves the 9 million New York City residents who rely on the city's water system. I understand that it is, yes, a series of pipes, and that's not as exciting and fun as affordable housing, but those pipes are quite important.
You missed my point, which was that you can utilize the air above it. That was my main point. Cantilever or steel is mighty strong. We're not like limited in the olden days, so thank you.
We'll also be working to balance multiple goals and the community's desire for a high quality open space on the southern portion of the lot, which definitely interacts with the suggestion of cantilevering over that space.
Thank you, Michael. Yes, and thank you, Anita, for the question. I mean, I think it really encapsulates, what we're looking for in terms of the bigger the lot, the less height ultimately the building needs to be for the same number of square footage. So obviously every inch that we can get in terms of that lot size would go toward that goal. And I think we're all have the same goal of wanting to bring affordable housing to the village. I think we've heard from many of the residents that housing is in very short supply here, and that this would be a very welcome addition to the Greenwich Village area. And that we want this building to be a very beautiful building and not a glass box. So, we hope that is part of the feedback that you're getting, and it sounds like that has been. I would like to thank everyone for coming, Tyler, Amy, James, Michael, Melissa. So thank you all for coming in again.
Amy.
And,
Amy.
sorry,
I'm just saying, thank you, Amy.
sorry, I said,
Oh, he said, yeah.
and Amy.
Okay, I just,
So thank you again. It's, it's a long voyage we're taking, but, it's another milestone we're about to hit. We are very much forward to the next step, which is receiving the community visioning report. And then, it sounds like it's the next, big milestone after that. So thank you. So with that, there are no other questions. I'd like to move to the next agenda item, which is the City of Yes. Katie, do you have something you'd like to add?
I'm just going to take a break for 1 minute and I'll be right back.
Okay.
We've been.
Eugene, we have
Yes.
Chris at the table. Should we move to that agenda item?
Yes, we do that. Thank you, Chris, for joining us. Thank you for joining in person. Always good to see you. Chris is here to speak about, as part of the City of Yes discussion.
Hey, Eugene, while people are exiting, can we just pause for a second so we
We
can
want to have
all
a quick break? Yeah.
listen? I don't know what's happening here, but
Eugene, it's Mark. If you want me to at some point put up onto the screen the draft that you circulated, just give me the go ahead and I'll do so.
Okay. Let's start with Chris, and then we'll move on to the draft.
Got it.
And actually, Chris, I don't know if you have anything that you want to present on the screen, or
that's nothing to present. I'm just gonna talk about the proposal I have.
Okay. Just to everyone in the room, do we need a couple of seconds just to get everyone settled?
Good.
We're good? Okay. All right. Thank you for being patient. And yes, the City of Yes is our next major topic. I would like to hand it over to Chris Marte. Chris, why don't you go ahead and take us through would you like to speak to us about the Arts Fund?
Yeah, definitely. First of all, thank you, Eugene and Katie, for all the work you've been putting into this, and Susan Wittenberg. They've been meeting with my land use director for the past few weeks, just to get down to the nitty gritty of the economic opportunity of the City of the Yes plan. A few weeks ago, I thought about an idea because we all know what we went through with the whole SoHo, NoHo rezoning and the consequences of that in regards to the Arts Fund. As we were looking through the current City of Yes proposal, there's one of the major goals is to expand home occupation throughout New York City. Home occupation allows people to live and work in their homes. Currently, New York City residents can do this, but only up to 25% of their unit, their apartment, or less than 500 square feet, whichever is less. Under the current proposal in the City of Yes, they want to increase this to 49% of your apartment or unlimited cap. And so when you actually look at this, it's quite similar to the joint live work quarters that SoHo and NoHo has. And so in reading this, I came to the conclusion of why does one neighborhood or two neighborhoods in the whole city have to pay into this arts fund while every single other neighborhood in the 5 boroughs can do almost exactly the same? Because under the plan, they're also increasing the type of uses that people can do in their apartments. For example, you can't be a barber in your apartment, you can't be a stockbroker, but this is gonna really open up the universe of what type of occupation you could do where you reside. And so we felt like, especially with Community Board 2's resolution, because you guys are so educated on what happened with SoHo and NoHo, and because we know the fear that many residents have in regards to the arts fund, that it would be great if you could add this to your resolution while my office continues to do advocacy to city planning and council land use as well. If worst case scenario, we move forward with the City of Yes and this is not included, I think there's a really great case to make that this is almost discriminating against folks who live in SoHo and NoHo. And so as the city move forward to change and rezone the whole city, I think they should include this in changing the amendment of the Arts Fund and take it away from SoHo and NoHo, so you guys can live, work, and do whatever you want, just like the rest of the city can after this resolution is passed and voted on by the city council.
Thank you, Chris. Mark, I don't know if it's possible for you to put up our previous resolution on this. I just sent you a link to the version we have online, but it's from the SoHo NoHo rezoning, just so we can take a look at our previous language on the rezoning as it relates to the arts fund.
Give me a second, I'll get it right up.
Thing.
Section J, ill-conceived arts fund.
Sorry, who was that?
Page 3. Section J. Number 3, section J.
Not only J. So F.
Yep.
And also. I.
I see that Connor from my team wants to be promoted, just in case he has to respond to any questions.
Yeah, I'll promote Connor. Okay, I thought I saw the resolution up there. Connor, I think should promote you, so you should be. Hi, Connor. Good to see you. All right, so Mark, do you have the resolution up on the screen? There it is. So I believe it's section 3, and that therefore be it resolved. That's where we make the mention of this previously. The proposed mechanism, and we talk about this in section F. F mentions the fee, and Anita, I'm sure you remember this from the SoHo NoHo resolution. If we could maybe make this a little larger on the screen, but F talks about the fee. We say that this is a punitive fee. The mayor's plan, if you could zoom in a little bit so everyone on the public could see this as well, Mark. But while he brings it up, I'll start reading through. The mayor's plan, and previously, and we passed this in July of 2021. So the mayor's plan imposes a $100 per square foot conversion fee that is financially punitive, particularly to pioneering, legally conforming senior citizens who are aging in place and who went through considerable hardship to legalize their spaces and buildings under the current zoning laws. In addition, the conversion fee does not mitigate any adverse impact from the mayor's plan in SoHo, NoHo, or Chinatown, especially the elimination of art manufacturing spaces. Meanwhile, the mayor's plan would newly allow as of right ground floor retail, department store, dormitory, and other uses, and significant increases to commercial FAR and no cost to commercial building owners. Moreover, the mayor's plan fails to make a distinction between these property owners who legally conform to the current zoning requirements and those who do not, which results in an excessive punitive conversion fee for those who have gone to great lengths to both convert and legally occupy use group 17D spaces, referring to JLWQA spaces. The other portion of this that refers to this is section J on the same, therefore be it resolved, the ill-conceived arts fund. So what we had to say on the matter then was the creation of an arts fund is ill-conceived because it fails to acknowledge or memorialize the contributions of artists to adapting, reusing and rebuilding SoHo and NoHo, and instead would simply create a non-city source for arts funding to distribute beyond the SoHo, NoHo, and Chinatown proposed rezoning area, which would not reflect the loss of spaces with the creation of art in SoHo and NoHo. In 1973, the Landmarks Preservation Commission stated that the district demonstrates one way in which the core of an old city can be given new life without the destruction of its cultural heritage. So these are the main sections of that, of our previous.
Eugene, does I refer to the adverse impacts in individual owners because it would impose conversion that would result in the $100 square foot
I'm sorry,
assessment?
when you say
Yeah, just above J.
Conversions. Oh, I guess, yeah, this also talks about that in a tangential way, right? I think this was talking about, right, that I think at the time, the concern was that the conversions would not be maybe on a unit per unit basis, but that it would have to be building wide, that it would be difficult for individual units to convert. And so there was a concern that maybe co-op boards would insist that the entire building convert all at once, you know, an all or nothing type of conversion.
Right, but that would result in more people having to pay more money into the fund. So I think that's part of the
Yes, it would.
the arts fund discussion.
Right. Yes, it would. It would. The concern is there that people maybe that wanted to retain their JLWQA would be forced to because the overall building insisted.
Eugene, can you just explain what we're doing here? Are we in business session? Are we in the presentation or what are we doing?
So we're still we're not in business session yet. So, I mean, we're discussing the, you know, we wanted to hear from the council member. And, you know, the goal here is to, as part of the City of Yes discussion, make a decision from the committee whether or not we feel it's appropriate to discuss, to put in language in the resolution, because this is not something that we had discussed in December. So is it appropriate for us to insert language in the City of Yes resolution? And if so, what would be an appropriate level of language to put in, you know, in terms of the specific sentences that we would want to vote to this issue, keeping in mind that our overall resolution is about 5 pages long. So we'd like to be proportional in the response if this is something that the board wanted to move forward with. I guess I have a question for Chris in terms of the timing on this. If you could maybe walk us through what is the city council's timetable for discussing this, the City of Yes in general?
Yeah, so we're still some time away from voting and discussing and hearing the economic opportunity portion of the City of Yes. As we all know, it's going through community boards and the borough president. Then it goes to city planning, and then it goes to the city council. So we're a few months away. However, my team has been extremely proactive in reaching out to city planning really early and talking about some of the concerns and giving them a lot of feedback on what we see and how it affects all 3 community boards in my district. And we're going to continue to do that with this equity argument when it comes to the arts fund and hopefully eliminating it from future use. I know Connor from my team wants to say something, so maybe he can add on to it.
Sure. Connor?
Sure, thank you. Yeah, no, I just wanted to, just 2 points I wanted to add. One pertains to the first paragraph you read off from the SoHo rezoning resolution, is just that it's important to remember that the conversion fee applies to any JLWQA unit that wants to convert to regular use group 2. And so that means that anyone who wants to be able to sell their apartment, their JLWA apartment, to non-artists or on the regular housing market as a regular residential unit. Whether they are certified artists and have been conforming with the JLWA rules this whole time or not. Any owner or occupant of a JLWA unit would have to convert and pay this conversion fee toward the arts fund. So it's not just targeting people who are non-artists, but it's targeting anybody who wants to realize the value of their JLWA apartment on the regular housing market. And just wanted to clarify that point. And then, the other piece, why it's relevant now, I think I just want to reiterate that, when you want to, the fact that the conversion fee and the arts fund are codified in the zoning itself, right? It's in the zoning resolution language. So it's not in some side law or in some program somewhere else. It's physically in the zoning. So if you wanted to change it in any way, you would have to go through a text amendment like we're going through with City of Yes right now. The problem with that, as we know through these City of Yes text amendments, is that any text amendment is a really heavy lift and it's a long process. And so the best chance you have at changing anything in the zoning is by folding it into a city text amendment like we have in front of us today. And we find it to be very relevant to economic opportunity because of this home occupation clause. Or this home occupation proposal. So we see this as a really great opportunity to be able to return to address the arts fund issue through City of Yes. So that's why it's coming up.
Yeah, in addition to that, city planning doesn't like to revisit neighborhoods that they already rezoned. And so if we don't take advantage of this opportunity now, it could be decades until we have this conversation again. And so that's why we think this is, the golden moment to really try to push this forward as part of this bigger citywide rezoning.
Okay, thank you for talking about why now is kind of the relevant time. Katie.
I just wanted to follow up because you're talking about sales, but I've heard it also applies to inheritance. Is that true? That if it changed title because of inheritance?
Right. So, the way I understand it is the certified artist status that's required within a JLWA unit is tied to the occupancy of the unit. So technically anyone can own, right, a JLWA unit. You just have to be able to prove occupancy by a certified artist. So under that logic, yes, if you're inheriting an apartment from your parents or something, and your parents were certified artists, but you're not, then you would fall under this violation as well. But yeah, and so even if you could sell it to, theoretically, you can sell your apartment at the value it's worth to someone who's a non-artist, they wouldn't be able to occupy the unit legally. And they would have to find someone to occupy the unit who is a certified artist.
Okay. Michael?
Yes, may I
Michael?
ask a clarification question? Is the ask that we include as part of our resolution on the City of Yes a clause that says eliminate the arts fund? And the reason for doing it here is that it's probably the only place that we could get city planning to focus on it. So is it as simple as that you're asking us to add to our resolution, eliminate the arts fund, which is punitive, because city planning will not consider it as a separate action? Am I correct there?
That is correct. In addition to the equity argument as well, right? Because as Connor explained, everyone in New York City will be able to have an equivalent model to joint live work quarters, and will be able to sell their apartments without facing any fines. And so if, we're promoting equity, there are richer neighborhoods than SoHo and NoHo that will be able to get away with it. And so why can't these neighborhoods also be take a part in this home occupancy that's being legally enabled everywhere else?
So we're asking the chairs of this committee to add another therefore be it resolved to our resolution regarding eliminating the arts fair. Thank you.
And just part of that is, I mean, I think from our perspective, it falls most in line with the home occupation proposal. So if it makes more sense for the community board to just try to include it as a component of your opinion on the home occupation component of this text amendment, that's where it feels most suitable in our opinion, but that's just.
Okay, and I think that the home occupation is proposal number 11 in the city of Yes. So I would like to take questions from the public, since again, we haven't had the opportunity to have this discussion. We didn't have the opportunity in December.
You see that you have some hands in the room?
Oh, sorry, I didn't, sorry. Susan.
Hi, thank you. The one more question I have with this suggestion is that, having attended every envisioned session for SoHo NoHo rezoning, one of the primary points that came up at each meeting was what is the give back, or what is the benefit, or how do we acknowledge the arts community in this area? And that even though the arts fund, we're calling it imperfect or whatever, it hasn't had any chance to exist. We don't know what it will be. It sounds like a good idea, but it hasn't happened. So in this proposal that you're making, Chris and Connor, it wipes that out and just feels like it will sound to the artist community that the only benefit from this change are property owners. So that it's not that I'm against taking, or pro a fee, but there's no inclusion now, anything about SoHo and NoHo historically being an arts community and benefiting this community now. Post-COVID, we have extensive restaurant plans that benefit the restaurant industry, which have been made permanent because they were considered impacted by COVID. The arts community has been impacted the same. Even one of our largest not-for-profits in the area, the Public Theater, has had to cut back major programming strands, major series, because costs have gone up and their donor base has not increased. So the small not-for-profits in our area are even more impacted. So this is coming up at a meeting tonight, which only a small part of the community knows about. The community assumes that we have a benefit from the SoHo NoHo rezoning for artists. Now this is being taken away without offering any substitution for it. So to me, that feels like a failure and a terrible loss.
Yeah, no, I just wanted, I guess that brings up a thought of, I think it's also important to recognize that I think there are distinctions between like the conversion fee and the arts fund, right? Or the concept.
We can't hear you.
We can't hear you. Or we can't.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. The conversion fee is the city's idea of sort of recouping funds for the arts, right? And I think that, there's many different ways to support the arts in a neighborhood and to sort of develop funding for those programs. The conversion fee can be removed without.
I understand what the conversion fee is. My point is not what you were saying. It is that, sure, there are other ways, but it's not in this proposal. So without that being codified as well, it's just a loss. So it's not that, and without that, I feel like every artist who attended the Envision meetings will feel betrayed by this, because they thought it was something that was said. And so if we can't include something, we're just saying, we don't want that, this doesn't work, but here's another idea. I think that's interesting, but to just take it away is loses the intent of what much of the SoHo NoHo rezoning was supposed to include.
I think on that point, there also were a lot of artists who were against the creation of this arts fund.
Yes.
Right. And they saw this as crumbs that the community and the artists didn't want.
Well, crumbs mean, being an artist in the community, that it's not enough, not that it is something that, Right, crumbs mean it's not enough. So that means if you're getting rid of the crumb, you're left with nothing. To me, the interesting part of the fund is that we don't know how big or effective it could be. So we're eliminating a possibility. You know, when we got a give back from Aurora developers in Gainsford, we got 2 rehearsal spaces. That was a great success for us and something that meant an enormous amount to the theater community. So I just feel like come up with something that replaces it. You can't just take something away without replacing it and not have people, especially as you're saying, who felt it was a crumb. So you're taking away the crumb without even offering another crumb.
I think a development deal like the Gansevoort is different from,
Fine,
you
forget
know,
that. Replace the crumb then with another crumb. You're saying all they were getting is a crumb and then you're taking the crumb away.
Could we, I think Frederica was next,
Yeah,
so.
thanks.
Frederica.
Thank you so much to your office, to Connor, for all the work that you have helped us with this City of Yes and this very creative idea that you have. We have to divide the Arts Fund into 2 parts. The conversion fee part of it and the benefit from the money that it will generate. Okay, there's no doubt about the value that the money could go to. But when we, in our resolution and in our discussions and in all of the envisioning meetings that we were at, I don't remember any support for the Arts Fund. And there was no willingness to negotiate about the price per square foot. We, in our reso, we don't say anything good about it. So if we're on the record as offering no support for it, then I don't think that it's our place even with this creative idea, to reverse course. Are you saying that we could have another meeting just on this?
no,
You said you were working in advance.
I think we're working as a council office to, try to get this through to city planning on ourselves, but we would love the support of the community board
I
as well.
thought I heard you say that you were working well in advance of the process.
That we have met with city planning a number of times. We just thought about this idea 2.5 weeks ago. And so, because the community boards have to submit their resolutions this week or next week.
Okay, so you're working on that schedule.
Yeah.
So given that, I would be extremely uncomfortable with neither an opportunity to have another meeting to hear what people say at the passage of time and to completely reverse the course that we laid out in our resolution. I just don't see how we can do that. That's just me. I take a lot of your points, Susan, but we didn't hear from a single artist who wanted to pay the conversion fee in order to get the proceeds.
We haven't heard from a single artist today who are
Right.
saying they're happy with having nothing. And this leaves nothing. So I agree with you. I wasn't happy with it either. I thought it was a betrayal by Margaret Chin.
Yes.
But a couple of years have gone by.
Right.
We've seen how the impact of COVID on the not-for-profit arts groups. And it's devastating. So now I feel like it's an opportunity to think of something. We don't want this, let's replace it with something else. I just feel like, particularly right now, you just can't take everything away.
Right, and I also remember now.
I was against it.
Yeah, I remember how against it you were, but I also remember that there was discussion about it. I guess it didn't show up in the reso, but there was discussion about the money coming back to SoHo and NoHo, being spent on NoHo. We didn't get that, right? I think Connor said that late this afternoon that it was still Lower Manhattan. So yes, there's great arts things to fund all over Lower Manhattan. Maybe that's not the obstacle, but I just think that we don't have any time it's just not the right process.
Could I take a question from, I think, Sean
Yeah.
Sean, and then I think I saw Janine after.
Yeah, if I recall, I was at a lot of the advisory board sessions of the Envision SoHo NoHo. And the main concern about the loss of arts was displacement of artists by new people who might not like living in a joint live-work atmosphere, milieu. For instance, the Ann Gillen, award-winning artist who works in the Lincoln Center, she was told by her landlord, the new tenant next door, the banker wanted her out because of the smell. And people like that, the sculptor who made too much noise, living above someone else who moved in, she was withholding maintenance. And so we were concerned that further gentrification would push artists out. And a fund was only sort of an ancillary thing talked about. The main concern was displacement of artists, not a funding. And if I'm not mistaken, maybe Connor knows, I believe I read somewhere that the fund can only be spent in economically disenfranchised neighborhoods, which SoHo NoHo is not. So we would put money in to a fund that would not be spent in the neighborhood. It wouldn't retain any. South of 14? Yeah. Okay, thank you for that correction. And on talking about what the artists think about this, I had a fundraiser on Sunday in my loft. Over 60 SoHo artists were there. And it's for Senator Kavanaugh. And the first question had to do with how he could eliminate this arts fund. And not a single person of those, many of whom, at least half of the artists, old-time artists, pioneers, not one person wanted this arts fund, and they were totally against it and were begging Senator Kavanaugh to do something to remove it. And I think the council member here is going to, oh yeah, Kavanaugh said, I can't do it at the state level. You have to work it with your city. He mentioned you by name and city council and the city planning. So I think we should eliminate this silly arts fund.
Thanks, Sean. I actually want to go to online, Katie and then Bo.
Thank you, Eugene. This is a question to Connor. You said that there would be other ways to spend the money or to collect the money. You didn't finish a thought about alternatives that I was curious to hear the rest of your thought.
So I think I was just trying to say that, you know, I think for this logic of like, you know, who's benefiting, is this a give back? I think there's a lot of different ways to look at it, but I think there's a pretty strong argument you can make that it's not even really beneficial in any way. I mean, I was saying that we, you know, of course we want to support the arts in SoHo and across our district, and I think there's lots of responsible policies that can affect that. But I think that to penalize a few dozen or 100 residents in order to generate money for a public fund is not like there's no like real policy precedent for that kind of thing. Like funds are usually generated by large companies, large developers, pour money into funds that may or may not go somewhere as intended. But I think that, you know, there's a lot of holes in that sort of paint a picture of not just a crumb, but almost just like a harmful policy. I think I don't want to create so much of a black and white picture around like, do we take something or not? I think there's a lot of ways that we can, you know, more honestly support the arts in SoHo and NoHo, and we shouldn't just take it because it was the only thing that was granted at that given time. But to your point, I think that, yeah, like I think that our office, but just generally, like there's lots of ways that, and if this is something that you wanted to incorporate into the resolution as like our alternatives that the community board considers better options to support the arts in SoHo and NoHo, out, like in addition to removing the arts fund, I don't think it, you know, you don't have to just focus on removing the arts fund, but if there's something that you wanted to replace it with as a supportive mechanism for the arts, like that can also be incorporated.
Thanks, Connor. Before I get to Bo, I want to just recognize I see people from the public with some hands raised, and I also in the room I think I see members of the public with the hand raised. So I promise I will get to you. We'll take our questions from CB2 and then we'll get to questions from the public. But Bo, let me Yes,
Thank
question?
you, Gene. Thanks. I want to thank Councilmember Marte and Connor Allerton for coming tonight. I think they have a very good proposal. I went to many of those envisioning SoHo meetings through almost all of 2019. And I also can tell you that I did not see any willingness by any of the artists in the room to pay a fee to support the arts. That was not something that was primary at all. In fact, it was extremely tangential, and it was presented as kind of like a last minute thing to sort of assuage some people's concerns. We don't want to get into a situation where we want to take a position where we don't want to fund the arts. I mean, who doesn't want to fund the arts? I certainly do. But funding the arts is the project of the city as a whole, or the state, or the federal government. It's not the responsibility of 200 or 400 people, not even 400. It's probably more like 300 people in SoHo and NoHo to fund the arts. It's not their responsibility. It's completely discriminatory. I think it's likely to be eliminated in other venues. And I really thank the council member for coming up with this, because that's the fair thing. And it is an honest reflection of what people expressed at those many envisioning SoHo meetings starting in 2019. And I certainly support adding that in some way to the City of Yes proposal that we finally passed. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Carter, I saw your hand raised as well. Smart.
Yeah, I just wanted to say there's some confusion. Maybe Connor, you guys can help us. There is no commercial in JLWQA. The work is not commercial work. There is no equivalent to the work in the City of Yes, because there's no requirement in anything with JLWQA that commercial is involved. It is simply the work of creating art. And there's a misnomer that we all have heard over and over again, that JLWQA is somehow work that people are running businesses, and that's not the case. And that's just something first and foremost. Secondly, there's no artist that has to pay this fee. Period. That's a fact. And that's what it is. The fee is paid by somebody going forward who makes a filing with DOB to make a change to use Group 2. That's it. Has nothing to do with sale.
That would affect the price.
Yeah.
It has always affected the price.
That's what I'm saying, it affects the price.
It is always. It's already factored into the price.
Yeah, so
it's been
lower.
impacted, and they'll go back to SoHo letters. The responsibility goes on to the person who's signing the SoHo letter, that they will personally take responsibility for non-compliance.
But the artists seem to think that in order for them to sell their apartments to a non-artist, they had to go through the.
Great point. Thank you for bringing that up. In the stipulation of settlement from the coalition, it says, I'll quote, "These occupancy restrictions, however, limit only occupancy and not. Thus, absent some agreement between transacting parties, current owners of JLWQA are not responsible for converting JLWQA to residential use prior to sale. Sellers of JLWQA are also not required to inquire about how a potential purchaser will comply with occupancy requirements." So
I'm just saying what.
But I'm just saying that this is a big, huge misconception.
Right.
That this, fortunately, with the stipulation of settlement, it eliminates stipulation of partial discontinuance. It eliminates any question about that. And that was a huge myth that routinely brought up. And in fact,
but you can't ignore reality. It's going to affect the price.
It's already in there. People are not.
Yeah, but that's not in.
So,
but let's focus.
Carter,
on.
your interpretation is completely incorrect. This is not the venue. No, it is incorrect. Let me just tell you that it is. And this is not the venue in which it's not the venue in which to discuss this. It's incorrect.
As a point of information, Susan, I'm very uncomfortable continuing this conversation without a review of the board's policies with conflict of interest and disclosure and self-disclosure regarding economic benefit for members of the board who are discussing this And if you could remind us of that.
I'm just gonna jump in and say that when I was chair, I raised this issue with the borough president's office and the conflicts of interest board. So.
Okay, I didn't raise the question to you. I raised it to Susan because we've changed our bylaws since then.
Well, we changed our bylaws. We cannot change what is the standard for a conflict of interest.
I didn't say that. That wasn't my question. We added a self-disclosure requirement that goes further.
No, we made we did not add a self-disclosure requirement because we're not allowed to do that. We made a statement encouraging disclosure. We're not allowed to compel people to disclose what's beyond the conflict of interest rules.
It just this is being presented to us, right, as an addition here, and it's not coming from an area-wide rezoning.
I cannot give you a judgment on whether or not somebody who is speaking has a conflict of interest. The
reason I say that, the reason I bring this up is because it's unfortunate that the crassness of the final conversation and the capstone on the SoHo NoHo is about money. And it's not about the arts. And that's what we don't hear anybody advocating for the arts. We asked for a lot of things and we got nothing. All we got was the arts fund. And I don't hear any discussion of how do we make it better.
Which we didn't ask.
How do we work on it? Right, but that's what we got, right? This is DCP's infinite wisdom of creating this or wherever it is. And the reason I bring this up is because now it's about money and people not wanting to pay money. And it's not about the underlying part of honoring. JLWQA is the only arts in SoHo and NoHo. That's it. That's what the creation of art is. That's in the zoning. And with the total removal of that and the arts fund, there's absolutely nothing left. And to simply discuss this absent that undermines everything that we talked about from the very beginning with respect to the arts. And the reason, I went to the conflicts is because it's straight up money. And that's not a good solution. And I understand why the books are open, right? That's the chance you got to do it. But nobody's bringing this up as a whole. And I'm just, as somebody who sat through and represented the board on the Envision SoHo NoHo, Sean was there also representing SoHo Alliance, Bo was there at some of the meetings. The arts fund was simply briefly came up during that. What it was trying to recapture what the space of creation of arts, what would you do? Where would you put it? And that's where it came up, but there's nothing left now. And so I just see this as, why did we even bother? If all it comes down to in the end is money, and that's not what our prelude has said over and over, all the board's positions. And so while we may have a position that you can isolate in our past resolutions, nothing else was done. Meaning that so now we're just taking away the last thing without any discussion as it's some island. And so anyway, that's what I have to say. I just think that while I understand the time frame, I think that we do have time if people want to set up something to have a better conversation about this. And it's certainly something, there's nothing that would preclude the board from communicating with our council member directly outside of this process. Ultimately, you don't need us to do this. That's within the purview of the city council to do this. And I think, though, that we would be better served with the time to properly discuss this. And if there are any other outstanding issues, if we're going to revisit this. And so I just find it difficult to compare the work to the city of yes. Again, I just go back to that because the creation of art has nothing to do with being a commercial artist. It's simply a manufacturing use that gave you space to create art. And there are plenty of artists who sit in their space.
Artists having to deal with convincing a potential buyer in the future not to request a decrease in the price, asking price of their lots.
You know,
And if we would do all this, and all we're not getting anything to preserve the arts, although the only thing we're getting is a penalty on the artists.
there's no penalty on that.
benefit to the arts because no entity has been created. I mean, that's such a negative view of,
It's a realistic view.
well, I mean,
It's a fiction. This arts fund is.
But you're not, haven't gone to the public, so.
yeah,
Are you an artist?
Yes.
That's what I'm saying.
Actually, not.
it's not the public.
Committee.
I just can't say something.
can't say anything
At a failure.
At this moment, but later, sure, later.
So Sean, you raised an excellent point, as we know, and it's been raised over and over and over, and all these buildings, boiler, roof, diamond plate outside, elevators. These are all issues that affect the price, and there's a patina of pricing that comes into play, and all buildings are different. And in fact, we've heard that there's, a lot of stress on buildings as a result of that. But this is simply one part of this. The pricing has always been factored. That's why there's SoHo letters to acknowledge this.
But, all right, so
The SoHo letter was basically illegal. It was an attempt, it was an attempt.
John Carter, okay, Frederica, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, I just want to recap that the things that I said are in opposition to not taking advantage of removing the arts fund. I.e., I support what you're trying to do in principle. I feel that the time frame is that all the artists who didn't understand in 2021 that they weren't going to be asked to pay the conversion fee should reconvene and decide if they want the other end of the arts fund, which is the money that generates. And if we don't have the time to do that, I actually feel very uncomfortable about making any changes. But you have such a clever idea that it seems a shame not to be able to take advantage of.
And I think convening this group doesn't mean that they are going to be the recipients of this fund.
No, but the arts community as a whole will.
And I think during the, I think,
Yeah, sure, right.
I think during the SoHo NoHo process, as Sean said, a lot of artists, and I think the majority of SoHo NoHo residents, if I could throw a number, maybe 95 to 97% of residents were against this fund, whether they had to pay the conversion fee or not.
Okay.
And so this is originating from those frustrations, those discussions that lasted years. And so a lot of the conversation has been had of whether this should exist or not. And I think we're just giving an avenue to respond.
Might have been against it, like me, for example, because you wanted more, not that you were not that you're proposing having nothing. So this takes away the only chance there is, and I believe it could be better. So I think that's a little bit revisionist.
I disagree that this is the only way that we can do this. My office, my office, not just as a council office, but also as co-chair of the Manhattan delegation, has given more money than previous council members to the arts, especially in this area. Me and Eric Botcher, who's my co-chair, even hosted our delegation meetings at the Public Theater to make the argument to other council members that more money should be invested in our arts institutions south of 14th Street. And so I know the past hasn't been great, especially for this neighborhood and especially for arts in this neighborhood. But in the past 2 years, that has drastically changed because I think the city and the state should put that money there and not put it on the backs of a few individuals.
Do you think the artists at your party or at your gathering, if they knew that there was no charge, that they would have changed their mind? Sorry, Eugene.
No, that's fine. I was wondering if I did see that there was someone at the table from the public. I'm assuming she's an artist. If we could maybe ask her, I think she wanted to speak.
Claudia.
Yeah, I am deeply perplexed by this. I think the arts fund is a fiction. Just ask you to state your name first so we know. Claudia Carr Levy. I moved into Soho in 1975. The building that I am in, I was the president of that building when we got a C of O. It was a factory when we moved in. We converted it. It's an oversized building. Half of it had to be only artists. Everybody who was in that building had to get a certificate from the city, and we did. And we made that a building, and all of us were artists. I am still an artist. I feel as though the people that are still in my building, we are all very close, have been put in terrible jeopardy because of this, actually because of what Margaret Shin did to us. And this conversion thing is a punishment instead. And we made this neighborhood. We created that neighborhood. We brought in galleries. I had it for a time. We have 2 galleries in my building now, but I had a gallery in my building at the time. We made the arts available and alive in Soho. And now, if we, I'm aging out, I know that. I would like very much to be able to sell my loft and be with my children elsewhere, perhaps. I'm over 75 years old, and I need to have alternatives. And I would then be put in jeopardy for having spent my life here and raised my children here. My husband was an artist too in the theater. And to speak to me directly. Yeah, but I know about the theater. I know about the importance of the theater. I care deeply about it. I care deeply about the arts. But to put me and my people in my building in jeopardy if they want to move out of and move on is, to me, an absolute absurdity. And I was at Sean's apartment. There was nobody there, not one person that I spoke to who was for this arts fund. If there was something that would be viable and intelligently done, that's a different thing in a way to create community in the arts. But to levy these fines on us and these restrictions on us, I think is deplorable, and it makes me really profoundly angry. That's what I have to say.
Thank you, Claudia. Claudia, right?
Yes.
Thank you.
Name's up.
Yeah.
Is that, it's hard to see it.
Sorry, I moved to the back. I just want to correct some things that I think are, I think people who have been in the weeds on this conversion fee and arts fund know that it wouldn't be paid unless there was a renovation and filing with Department of Buildings if the city were to enforce it. But if Claudia sells her apartment, and I don't know, maybe you've lived there since 1975, maybe it hasn't been renovated in 50 years. Whoever buys it will probably want to renovate it. And if this is being enforced, it's supply and demand, it's Econ 101. In a buyer's market or a seller's market, it may shift a little bit, but it will impact the purchase price. If somebody needs to pay $300,000 to an arts fund, they're going to pay Claudia and her heirs $300,000 less or $400,000 less for the apartment. So when people talk about, oh, you're not paying, if you're an artist, you are paying eventually. And maybe your heirs are paying, but I do want to point that out. Whether you think that's right or wrong, that's the simple economics of how real estate works.
I want to know why we were required when we bought this building to get a C of O, and we had to bring that building up to code and go through all the inspections in order to get a C of O, and all of the legislation that was passed for us to make this a legal building. And now all of a sudden, everything we did, there was no, of course, everything had to be renovated because it was a factory. And we did renovate it and we did make it livable. And over time, some people have moved out and other people have moved in. There are less artists now than there originally were. But those that remain, which are the balance of my building, are in this terrible predicament. That's why, that I don't understand. Wish somebody could explain that to me in a coherent way. I don't understand.
Could I take a question from Michael Levine? And then,
Can you put the bracket?
Thank you, Eugene. I have a point of order. And that's to ask the co-chairs of this committee, do you intend to bring this to a vote tonight? Although I understand the ask being made by our council member and by Connor, I don't think this committee is ready at this point to vote. I'm just curious to add it to our City of Yes resolution. So I'm really asking the co-chairs if at this point do you want to bring this to a vote tonight, or do you want to postpone this discussion and possible action for the future?
so thank you for the question. I mean, the goal was to bring this to a vote, was to, regarding the council member's proposal, the goal was to consider it and make a decision or vote whether or not we would add it to the City of Yes. I also do want to remind the committee that we still need to discuss the City of Yes resolution, and there are items that we need to wrap up in terms of our support, our overall support for City of Yes, and then by proposal, whether we do or do not support each proposal, because these are the two things that we did not fully discuss in December. So we do need to have that discussion and vote. And then regarding the whether we take this on as a portion of the resolution, to what extent would we add that on? Katie, do you have anything to add in terms of the direction?
No, I think we do have to decide if we're going to add it. And I see Valerie's hand is up. And maybe after Valerie, we should close this portion and thank the city council member for.
I'd like to make one more statement after Valerie.
That Valerie hasn't spoken, Sean.
Yeah, no, after Valerie.
All right, you can go ahead, Sean. It's fine.
Thank you. I think we all have this great vision of how the government works so efficiently, and that all this money that's going to be taken is going to go to the artists. When I converted a bunch of us artists, not myself, but artists, I lived in SoHo for about 8 years prior. We bought one of the last cheap warehouses, and we had to pay, I forget what it was, but I recall the total fee in 1981 was $30,000 to what is called a BRAC tax, Business Relocation Assistance Corporation. And allegedly that money was going to go to manufacturers to help them move who were displaced by our gentrification to places like, Greenpoint, Williamsburg, wherever Sunset Park. And I never heard much about it for years and years, and I just forgot about it. It was part of what we had to pay to move into that building where I now live. And at one of these committee's hearings about 8 years ago, it was brought up, it was in an NYU classroom. One of the presenters for an applicant brought up the BRAC tax. And I go, whatever happened to that money? He goes, it went into the general fund. And I did more research. Only 2 manufacturers got any help from all the tens, if not hundreds, if not millions of dollars that was put into that fund. So if anyone thinks that there's going to be any justification and equitable distribution of this money, you don't really know how New York City government works.
Valerie?
Thank you. I wanted to ask, and for the record, when was this item added to the committee agenda?
It was added this week.
As in yesterday or Monday?
It was added just before the meeting, not this week. We got a notice 10 minutes before the meeting, Valerie.
No.
So the committee found out 10 minutes before the meeting?
No, I'm sorry.
No,
What are you referring to? Excuse me.
I'm sorry, the item that's on the floor right now about this adding in this language.
The Arts Fund, correct. Yeah, that wasn't earlier this week.
No,
May I?
Marte's, Chris's name as the third agenda item, was it yesterday or it wasn't?
So it added to the agenda yesterday, just to
It
clarify.
was added, I believe it was added to the website on Monday and the e-blast went out yesterday.
Okay, got it. That was my question. And my second comment was,
Sorry, notice.
That's okay. Then my second kind of comment or kind of rhetorical question is this committee really going to pass something that is based on a third-party characterization of a political fundraiser? Thank you.
The admission price was $5.
Well, could I just ask one question that might be helpful? In our reso, we talk about, what number is it? We have concerns about, which one is home occupation?
11.
11. Okay, we talk about number 11 as one of the proposals. Sorry, I'm having trouble here. There's 11. No, okay. On page 3. As one that we have no support for, where you're not supporting home occupation. So let's say that we wanted to say why we weren't supporting it. And then say, and we wonder if it doesn't put the arts fund in the position, the recently passed arts fund in the position of penalizing one neighborhood because of the conversion fee. I don't know if we were going to do that, whether we would leave that in the section that says we have no support. Because are they really going to read the sections that we have no support for? Or if we should rework that section so that we at least raise the topic that Chris is bringing to us. Is that unfair to the community?
No, that's a fair question. And so actually, as I mentioned a little bit ago, for the City of Yes resolution, what we still need to do is go through the proposals and identify the ones that are either we support with comment, do not support with comment, and then the third grouping is neither support, neither support nor not, nor fail to support and no comment.
Right,
So there are some that we can move from one section to the other.
Okay, but we're going to have one more City of Yes, right?
Yeah, housing opportunity.
And do you have enough knowledge about that to see if there might be an opportunity for what you have in mind in there instead of in this one?
The text hasn't been released. So.
But the objectives of it have been.
Yeah, but it's not as parallel to what we have in front of us.
Okay.
I agree.
So this has been a very long discussion. It's been much longer than both Katie and I were anticipating this being. And we didn't want this to overshadow the entire discussion for City of Yes. So I would ask that we can try and draw this portion of the meeting to a close so that we can get to the City of Yes. Are there, I think Roy, let me just take the last two comments in the room. Roy, if you want to speak, you've had your hand raised for some time.
Gonna keep him here longer.
I'll get back to Roy. And then I think we have one question from the public or comment, Amit Solomon.
I'm sorry, were you calling on me? Because
Yes, so I saw that you had your hand raised, so I just want to take the last two comments in the room before we close this topic and move on to the City of Yes. So
yes, I'm sorry. I thought you were referring to taking comments from other people before you got to my question. I'm sorry. My question is to the council member and his team, because I definitely know that Deborah's gonna have questions about this tomorrow for me. I've heard a lot of things being said today, but I'm kind of confused as to whether the council member is proposing to essentially eliminate the arts fund fee or to apply it equally across the city, given the conversions from regular apartments to working quarters. Because from what Carter has been saying, and points that were raised, the arts fund fee only applies to when there's a conversion from an already LGBTW. Sorry. So, yeah, I always get, the thing wrong. And into a residence, right? And so if somebody say that, City of Yes goes through and the conversion is allowed, somebody in Brooklyn looking to turn their apartment into a working quarters, there would have to be an assessment for that unit. There's a process for these quarters to be assigned as being used for our purposes, and that was usually an application process and everything. So there's a lot of questions as to how would that be applied across the board in the city, if that's what you're proposing.
Hi, Roy. We're proposing to eliminate the arts fund. We don't want to expand it to the rest of the city.
Oh, all right.
Maybe you should see how everyone thinks about it. If everyone is so eager.
All right, and then I'm just gonna take one last comment. Amit?
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes. If you'd like, we can promote you, but otherwise.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Working.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. Thank you for letting me speak. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Amit Solomon. I'm a member of the steering committee for the Coalition of Fairness in SoHo, and we've been on the forefront of this advocacy and legal fight against the Arts Fund. We commend Councilmember Marte for this initiative, his work for the community. This Arts Fund is a big problem for people just like Claudia and several hundred artists and families in SoHo were alone charged with this fee. Many people, including the certified artists, need to sell because they're getting older, they have life events that require them to sell. And this is an issue that affects them today. The reason that the arts is impacted is not because people have to pay the fee, it's because the city stopped certifying artists. And so there's no opportunity for people like Claudia and other artists to sell to other artists. One thing that hasn't been mentioned is the Department of Finance now has a database that tracks JLWQAs. It needed a lawsuit to release this information. And clearly, once the legal challenge is over, there's going to be stringent enforcement of this arts fund fee. We've not heard in 2 years or 3 years from a single artist or homeowner that supported this arts fund. The only support is from people who want other people to pay this fund, whether they're renters or people from outside the neighborhood who are totally fine with other people paying a huge fee. Now with the City of Yes, everyone in the city will be able to have live work. And that just highlights the unfairness of very few hundred people paying this huge fee to get what everybody else gets. We have another proposal, which I hope you can adopt. The City of Yes, for the first time in 52 years, is reclassifying zoning uses from 18 down to 10 groups. Lumberyards will be moved from 17B to use group 2. Storage, labs will be reclassified. Nurseries will be reclassified to agriculture and so on. There's no reason why, as a part of this broad reclassification, GLWQA won't be similarly reclassified from 17D into the new residential use group 2, where they belong, and not the manufacturing group 10, where they don't belong and they've been for half a century. This is a golden opportunity that we shouldn't miss. None of these reclassifications require physical conversion. The only one that requires physical conversion is a GLWQA to residential. That makes absolutely no sense. I encourage you to strongly support Councilmember Marte's proposal, which restores fairness that we lost during the SoHo rezoning. And I also recommend reclassifying JLWQAs as residential use, which is what they are. This is just a golden opportunity and it won't come back. So please help us in doing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Amit. Okay. I would like to call for a vote then, I guess, on council members' suggestion for whether we include text regarding the Arts Fund in the City of Yes proposal. So could we call for a vote? All those in favor of including this, and the section I believe that makes the most sense would be as part of the home occupation section.
Are we gonna have a business session?
Sorry, yes. We are, let's move to business section then.
Are we gonna skip the third topic then?
The City of Yes.
Didn't we vote on that?
Yeah, we already voted that in December.
You told me on the phone earlier today we didn't. Can't have it both ways.
No, he can change his mind.
We could forget.
My recollection
the
is that we
two- well, the
voted on which sections we were in support of and which ones we weren't.
Two
We
things, the
didn't
two
vote
things
on
we have
the whole
outstanding.
thing, but
Right,
we voted on individual.
right. So the two things we have outstanding are whether we are going to have support for the entire City of Yes proposal, which we didn't discuss.
Must
And
we
that's
do
what-
that?
Must we do that?
Yeah, I mean, why, we're submitting a nuanced reso. Some we support, some we don't. Who says we have to come down yay or nay for the whole thing?
It seems like the other community boards that have been submitting so far have indicated their support or not. So I wanted to throw that out to the committee, whether we should add that to our resolution, because we are vague on this. We don't take a stance. It seems like the majority of the conversations that we've had indicated that we had many issues with the City of Yes.
I wanted to add, Eugene, that on balance, we voted more no, we supported fewer things than we objected to.
Yes.
And then there's the list of things that we don't want to comment on, and it does not, and we're not indicating that we support them because we're not commenting on, because other community boards may be saying no. So really, overall, we're saying no. We're not in support. So that's
We don't
just
explicitly
sort of mathematically how I thought about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but we don't explicitly say one way or the other.
But I would be happy to say no, because really there's so much no that we've come up with. Did someone email me that to final draft? Because I want to refer to the same pages. I don't see what you see. Whatever Donna's looking at.
It's
I don't
on the
have
Google
that.
Drive.
I'm looking at what I printed out. on the
Google
content.
Doc.
Okay, it's final.
Does it have all the little corrections and questions, or is it? Oh, okay. I thought it was more final.
I think what's in the room is you printed from the Google Doc, right? So everyone in the room has a copy of the City of Yes RRESA, right? And that's from the Google Doc. So Katie, it should be the version that we were just looking at right before we got into the meeting.
Right. Okay. I'll see.
It still has items that are suggestions. So it's in terms of a draft, there are still sections of it that are suggestions that haven't been fully incorporated yet.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
But the question is, should we indicate support, yes or no? And then for the individual ones, again, are we indicating support? Are we doing a deny unless format? Or are we kind of happy with the way it is right now? Because right now, if you look at the therefore be it resolved section, I think, which starts on page 3, is it 3 or 4? 2, three, yeah, so there's the first part of the therefore be resolved is no support, and there are 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 proposals that are no support. Some support with specific recommendations is the second section. And then there are 6 proposals where we have no comments. As a committee, we have no comments.
But Eugene, just, can you guys just clarify, we have a worksheet, right, that we've been asked to complete.
Right.
And we have an overall position. And so we went through it point by point, right, in order to complete the worksheet so that there could be better guidance to whoever takes the worksheet and looks at it. And then we have overall position on all of it, right? I mean, that's how they wanted us to respond. And I guess the quandary is, if we are against the city of yes or for it, or if we're against it and we're okay with parts, what does that mean? I mean, just in communicating it, because it becomes a little challenging in that regard. If somebody simply wants to take the worksheet itself and say, oh, they support this or they don't support that, whereas, it seems to create a foregone conclusion that this is moving forward. And it's going, I mean, I don't know. These are the conversations, obviously, everybody has had amongst themselves about what does this mean? What does it not mean? I mean, so can we all get on the same page with that also? And I think it's important to discuss it now, because if anybody is going to be communicating the board's position going forward, there needs to be clarity on that, particularly if there's advocacy work or people are asking questions. We're always faced with this dilemma, right? If you say no, you don't get to talk about it. But in this case, can there be further discussion if the board is against the whole proposal? And I think this lays out room for that, but I think it's very important that we discuss it here so there's some clarity going forward.
Right, no, I think that's an important point. Susan, I just want to get to you. I see you have your, Susan Kent.
Yes, thank you. I think Carter is making a really important point. If you come out and you say overall yes or overall no, that may be all that people hear. We can say we support we recognize that there needs to be a modernization and we support that idea, but there are simply too many elements to support this version of this legislation, of all of these changes.
I like that language.
And that that the goal is not just the goal is to modernize to what actually is our reality. And therefore, based on all of these elements that we've identified as not working for a community like ours, that's what we're saying no to, not to the overall goal, but there has to be more work done on this to make it work properly.
I just wanted to say one thing, Eugene, to answer Carter. The worksheet, I haven't looked at it for a while. The worksheet is optional. And when I was looking at it, I felt it wasn't going to capture the nuances of some of our discussions. I see Connor's nodding. So I haven't looked at it lately, but I didn't feel it was going to help us advance the things that we wanted to advance. And we do have some overall, thoughts, and one of them, as Susan says, is we do agree with some of the modernization. But something that Anita sent around originally, a couple people sent it around, talked about the fact that, we're responding to something that was, put in place 60 years ago, and we're responding with something that's sort of rigid again. And I think that piece that Anita, something really jumped off the page at me, that, you know, this isn't dynamic enough. And it certainly isn't dynamic enough for to capture our community in relationship to other communities. So it's a philosophical point.
Yes, Frederica.
Thanks. I do believe we were in the process of voting about whether to insert Chris's
Yes, so.
concept. Number one, hold on. And
Okay.
number two, if you look at the ones that are under no support in the first section, proposal 5 starts with "we support maintaining." So we're putting that in the wrong category. All right, we have some support. We also, in number 12, say we're opposed to any changes to the rules for the SLID. But the SLID isn't the only thing in proposal number 12. So I would move that into another category. And basically, without taking up your time going through every one of them, I feel that we need to look at what we've written and decide if we really have no support or we take exception to a certain part of it. And in the first section where we say we have specific serious concerns with respect to the impact of the following proposals, most of them just describe the proposal and don't have a specific concern. So that part of it needs work also. I don't want to detract from the fact that we should go back and vote on Chris's.
Thank you. And let me just quickly address your first part, which is I'm just looking at the language for proposal 5. I know the language says that Rezo says we support maintaining, but the part that comes after that is the status quo. So we're saying we support the status quo, which is not.
I'm just saying, I don't believe that we really have no support. I think we should actually be more nuanced. And the original version of the Rezo, the first version, said we support job creation, we support revitalized neighborhoods, we support updating the zoning rules. I think we should start with those things, and then, but we don't think that these citywide text amendments work for our neighborhood, and here's why.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of what Susan.
Exactly what she was talking.
Susan said, that we agree it needs, well, I'm not as optimistic. We agree that something needs to be done, but this is not working. So, I mean, that's sort of what we're saying about everything, that we believe something needs to be done, but this is not what needs to be done, which I'm paraphrasing. Susan, I think.
Katie?
I just wanted to respond, to point something out about the SLID. George Janes, who we retained to advise us, told us that in the special district section, the only part that pertained to us was the SLID, but it was if it was he wondered if there was a drafting error, but if what they proposed is true, it's going to change the SLID dramatically. So that's that, just so you understand where that came from.
All I'm saying is, I think we have to actually read what we've written and then decide which category it goes in.
Yes, and
or rewrite so that it supports no support.
And in some of the comments, I don't know if the version that you're looking at has all the comments in the document.
Get 5 votes.
But there are questions in there about, whether some of these proposals are in the correct category.
I'm voting.
Good.
So yes, Connor.
2, 3.
You're still
Sorry.
muted.
Yeah, I didn't know if you saw the hand. I just wanted to add to this, the thing about and sorry if you're going to vote on the arts fund thing first, but just since we're talking about the City of Yes resolution generally, I think I would just put in that, the way that they've broken it down into the proposals has nothing, in my opinion, to do with the text amendment. It's a way that they thought that they could break it down primarily for like the slides and the way they present it, right? But there's nothing innately segmented into 18 categories in the text itself, right? It's a way that someone at DCP thought of how to break it up in their head. So I think it's really worth, carving it out the way you see it, it's like that worksheet is exactly that. It's a worksheet. I think they maybe thought it would be helpful, but if it's causing more trouble than anything else, I think it's worth, structuring your resolution the way it makes most sense for what you're speaking about. And I would also say, I would recommend that I think it is important to have a final determination, a final decision in addition to that, because that's sort of how ULURP works, right? The way that they're going to record it is by a vote. And I would say that I would hope that everyone does read through, especially at the planning commission, and everyone reads through the entirety of each resolution. But a big component of that is what is your vote as a community board? And so they're going to tally those as part of their consideration. So I think it's important to incorporate that as well, right? You're going to have this many community boards at the end of the day are yes with conditions, no with conditions, straight no with comment, yes with comment, whatever it is. So I feel like it's just important to have that as well.
Thanks for that, Connor. Yeah, and I think the worksheet itself also has those 18 divisions. I mean, I agree, they're a little arbitrary, and it's not how it's structured in the actual 1,000-page text. But it's what they gave us to work with, and that is actually how we've structured our response so far. Can we step back? I want to put us to business session and have us take a vote on the council members' proposal, and then we can move on to the City of Yes. So let's go to business session and take a vote for the proposal to, the question is, should we add as part of the ask from the council member, adding in text to discuss or eliminate the arts fund as part of the City of Yes proposal, City of Yes response.
So are we discussing this now?
Well, I don't think we've discussed it enough.
I think we discussed it.
Well, we weren't in business session.
Yeah, we're
I'm just
discussing.
asking. I mean, when
I feel like
everybody,
we've had a discussion. I mean,
that's.
Call for a vote? Is that what you're asking?
yeah, I'm calling for a vote. I mean, do we need further
Yes, let's
discussion?
vote.
Yeah, second.
Okay, you're seconding. Okay, so all those in favor
Of,
all right, so adding in text to the City of Yes proposal, I would propose in the section, since we have decided to do this by the 18 proposals, under the section for home occupations, which is number 11. And should we add in text to call for the elimination of I want to say the fee, the conversion fee, the conversion fee.
well,
Okay, let's,
what's left of the arts fund if there's no conversion fee?
What's left of the arts fund without the
Yeah.
conversion fee?
Why would you not call for the dissolution of or just say that this should supersede the arts fund? Supersede?
Yeah.
But we're not superseding with anything.
Well, that that new regulation or that new zoning would supersede. Connor, you can help us with the language after, right?
Yeah, I was actually just pulling it up right now, if it's helpful, just to show, because
Let's
it's really a
vote
small.
first and see if there's any, before we fiddle with the language.
I'd like to have a better
Yeah,
idea.
1 second. I can try to pull it. It's really just a few sentences in the zoning resolution. I'll do one second.
Susan, did you have your hand raised?
It does have to make clear that the arts fund will no longer be collected, that the fee will no longer be collected. However you do it, it's got to be specifically laid out. Otherwise, you will see a challenge to it.
Okay. So eliminate the conversion fee and the arts fund.
You don't have to do with the arts fund.
Is conversion fee what's used in the,
Is that the language?
Connor's get it.
Pulling it out.
Pulling it out.
Okay, here. So I can also paste this maybe, but it says, any conversion to a residence shall only be permitted upon certification, blah, 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 that instruments in form acceptable to the city are executed and recorded that thereafter. A contribution has been, so this is for any conversion, like we've talked about, has been deposited. So a contribution has been deposited in the SoHo NoHo Arts Fund. The execution, so it's really, I think the recommendation is really just the part that says if you want to convert, you have to pay $100 per square foot into the arts fund. It's not necessarily
Contribute.
removing the arts fund. It's just saying that you don't have to contribute that amount to the arts fund.
So it's the conversion fee is what we should be focusing on.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
would say so.
Focus of from the rezoning perspective, that's how it was written, right?
Yeah, and then it says the contribution amount shall be $100 per square foot. So it's like it's in there. So it's that's the part that I guess would be removed.
You're calling to eliminate that language,
No,
wouldn't that get the same result?
that's two different
So
documents.
it's eliminating or adjusting it however it needs to remove the requirement in the zoning resolution of the conversion fee upon conversion to use group 2 for JLW units.
Yes, make a suggestion. On page 4, it has, we go through all the quality of life concerns, top of page 4. And I would recommend retaining the current definitions, regulations, home occupations. However, if approved, and then support, and then some of the language that's here. Because we're basically in proposal 11 opposed to expanding home occupation, but if it were to pass and approved, then it would be inconsistent and then you have the clause after.
We've done that before.
Sorry, so I'm sorry, I couldn't hear part of what you were saying.
Sorry, let me move.
It was Janine.
Sorry, on the top of page 4, there's the quality, you go through all the different quality of life concerns in proposal number 11. And I would move to the end of that paragraph, the last sentence, that we recommend retaining the current definitions. And obviously you can wordsmith it later. And then the second paragraph would begin, however, if proposal 11 is approved, you know, and then work in the language that's in here now.
This whole thing needs to be.
I mean, I know it needs to be tighter and smoother, but basically, because we are opposed to lifting the home occupation thing, but if it passes, it would be, basically say it needs to be, SoHo NoHo needs to be re-examined because the undue burden for a particular class of occupation.
Right,
And
and also
that's
mention the equity.
Yeah.
The equity angle, and so it's sort of, we oppose this, however, if it passes, we want this to happen.
Okay, that's a smoother way to put it in the resolution. And then we would have that section that says specific to the rezoning, et cetera, about the home occupations.
Question though, whether it passes or not, you still want to get rid of this. It's unfair. It's an unfair tax. Do you still want to get rid of it regardless of whether or not it passes?
However, if, let's say after the community board resolutions, city planning says we're actually not going to touch home occupation, then we lose that argument in regards to the conversion fee. And so I think the way Janine put it is probably the best way to move forward.
Right, because it covers it in case it's denied.
Yeah.
Right, and that's, still need to wordsmith that a little. Yes, sorry. Someone say my name. Was it Carter? Or
No, I'm just not clear. If you could just go through again what we're proposing to say here, because it was not clear to me, because I didn't have a piece of paper in front of me.
Okay, so on page 4, after the section that says we recommend retaining the current definitions and regulations of home occupations, we would have another paragraph that says, however, if the changes related to home occupations pass, then, and then Janine, what was your recommendation again? That we would
However, if proposal 11 is approved, and this needs to be shortened, CB2 recommends the conversion fee and I'm jumping down, and the conversion fee from the recent SoHo, NoHo Chinatown rezoning be re-examined for its applicability and undue burdens for a particular class of occupation.
You're so far away from the microphone,
Okay.
Janine.
I'm
Sorry, it's very hard to hear.
I am just working with the language that's in here, which I did not write.
Yeah.
So basically the first, everything needs to be tightened and tweaked and wordsmithed. So I don't want this to be like gospel or anything. The first paragraph would essentially remain the same in terms of content. And then you would move at the end of the first paragraph, we recommend retaining the current definitions and regulations of home occupations. That is the last line in the second paragraph. And then the second paragraph would then begin with something like, however, if the city approves changes to regulations of home occupations, CB2 recommends eliminating, I'm adding that word, the conversion fee from the recent SoHo, NoHo Chinatown rezoning due to whatever, et cetera, exactly. That's the gist of it. And it needs to be wordsmith, but that's the gist of it. So no on 11, however, if it passes, we recommend eliminating the conversion fee. ...
Examine, right. We recommend that it be re-examined.
Well, I think we just throw ourselves on Connor to help us get it worked right.
But for Donna's sake, that's the general
Right.
gist of it.
Yeah, so that it's not vague in terms of what we're voting on, because
We're not caught, in that language does not mean want the elimination of the arts fund. We just are talking about the conversion fee.
we're asking it to be re-examined.
No.
No, I think we should use the word eliminate.
No, we don't want to
But
eliminate.
Eliminate.
Okay, so it's eliminate, not re-examine.
Right.
Right.
Valerie, do you have a question? I see you have a question.
Yeah. Thank you, Eugene and Katie, for letting me speak. Just to clarify, if to eliminate the conversion fee / the arts fund, will Councilmember Marte be voting yes on City of Yes?
Oh, it's a bigger discussion. There's other issues that I have with economic opportunity City of Yes plan that affects other community boards. And so there's a lot more work to be done on this proposal to get me to a yes vote. But right now, I still have issues with it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, so is that clear, Don, in terms of the text that we would be adding to the existing resolution? And we'll tighten up the text, but essentially we'll add that second paragraph, which is a conditional, if it is. If it is passed, then we recommend that it be eliminated instead of the current text says re-examine, but we'll say eliminated.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, could I call for a vote? Can we call for a vote on this?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, great. All those in favor of adding this into the section for section 11, proposed the home occupations? How about all those opposed?
Opposed.
I didn't vote. I'm sorry. I have to vote now.
Yeah, I'm abstaining.
Who's abstaining?
John DeVerna.
I'm
John
gonna,
Paul's abstaining?
So what's the vote?
I'm gonna vote yes.
I don't know.
Can we see can I see the vote again?
Yeah.
Can we have the hands raised for opposed? So just so we,
For it.
What did you? I can't.
all right, so Susan,
Can you see the three are opposed?
Donna, Carter, Susan. Me, okay. Oh, Michael's opposed.
No, no, I'm sorry, I'm in favor. Michael's in
Oh,
favor.
he's in favor? Okay,
Right.
fine. Okay.
Frederica, were you opposed?
No.
I'm a yes. I thought we moved on. Sorry.
All right,
You don't oppose, are you?
Federica supports.
I support.
all right.
Okay, can I read out the supports to make sure I
Yeah.
have, everyone agrees that with what I written down? Sean supports, Eugene supports, Bo supports, Stella supports, Michael supports, Frederica supports.
What about you, David?
And I
voted also.
I
And
support,
David supports. Okay, thank you, David.
and Anita.
I have, oh, Anita supports? Okay.
And then John
And
Paul.
Jean-Paul abstains. Jean-Paul abstains, correct?
Correct.
Okay. The ayes have it.
What are you guys gonna do for us? Just eliminated it.
Come on, man. Don't even go there.
I
Come on.
know.
Don't even get on the high horse car.
Okay, that's that's enough,
Really,
Carter.
there's a lot more to preserve.
Carter, hello?
I didn't.
Nothing,
John?
Sean, you know it.
Don't respond. Don't respond.
Rich people city.
Excuse me, show that thing. to you.
It was well discussed. It was thoroughly discussed.
It's 10 after.
So, done. Done.
It's 6 after 10.
It's 10 after 6. It's 10 after 6 and I'm gonna be the one who says, we have to talk, yeah, we have to talk about 388. Okay? No. I want to talk about 388.
Okay.
Okay, well,
I don't have to.
now, the bigger question is about the other reso, about
Thanks.
the whole reso.
So much.
Thank you, council member, for coming. Thank you, Connor.
Yes, thank you, Chris. Thank you, Chris.
I can stay on if you have more questions about the rest of the reso. If it's
Okay.
helpful.
Thank you, Connor. We appreciate your expertise.
So on to the rest of the reso for City of Yes.
Financially done.
What are we doing now?
So for the rest of the reso,
Are you walking me home? Wait a minute. Yes, I have a deadline tonight. I would love to.
okay, I just want to make sure we have all of our proposals in the right buckets. Through those.
It's for fun.
Do people need a minute or can we come back? Can we come back? Can we come back? Do I need to flick the lights like a sixth grade teacher or? Okay. Okay, let's, as Frederica points out, Sean Sweeney, I see you. As Frederica points out, it's after 10 and we want to get Frederica home sooner rather than later. So, Eugene, what's our next step on City of Yes, do you think? What's the next vote we should take?
Let's make sure we have all of our proposals in the right buckets. Because I think Frederica rightfully pointed out there was at least one that I think is not in the correct bucket. So
okay.
Let's walk through quickly the ones that are no support. Proposal 5. So this starts on page 3. Mixing commercial above the ground floor. I think we had those discussions. We had no support. I think Frederica had an issue with the language that we start with the language we support maintaining. We can rework that to say we don't support. I mean, we're supporting the status quo, which is we support the current separation or the principle of housing being above commercial. But I think let's agree that we have no support for mixing commercial above the ground floor. Proposal 10, amusements and rides. Support.
So I just want to make sure, Eugene, are we taking out the last sentence? We suggest augmenting the 15-foot separation or talking about new construction. Are we just going to just have the first, the first sentence, don't mix it. Keep housing
Yeah, because
above
similarly,
commercial.
saying we have no support.
What is that, vodka or gin?
Both.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, if we're saying no support, so similar to what we just talked about, the last part of this is we suggest augmenting the 15-foot separation between business and residential.
Thank you.
That's difficult for us to say when we're saying we just have no support for this proposal.
Yeah.
So either we can move it to support with comments, or we can add in, however, were proposal 5 to pass, we would also suggest augmenting the 15-foot separation.
Hey,
Yeah.
Eugene? Do you think that we ought to vote on whether we support the city of yes or not? And then we can let you and Katie, we can trust you and Katie to jiggle around and then we'll be on record for yes or no, and it won't matter which bucket they're in.
If you will vote to allow us to do that, then that's fine. This is how we get ourselves into some trouble, though.
I think we should vote on whether we support it or not.
Yeah, that's the big part.
Could I make a parliamentary gesture? Why don't we, point of order, thank you.
Order.
It's just something I thought of. Why not, do you consider, like we do with the SLA committee, deny unless or approve? No?
We already agreed we didn't want to do that. We don't want to do that.
Oh.
We can say nobody pays.
Okay.
Only.
Yeah, and Chris said, Sean, just to your point, Chris said that he thought the most powerful thing was a yes or no.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
last time.
Just an idea.
So with straw poll, are we
Yeah.
not answering the worksheet?
I would say don't answer the worksheet.
Yeah, can we just do a straw poll just before we?
We're not gonna hand in the worksheet. We're not gonna fill it out.
Does everybody agree with that?
Yeah.
I agree with
All
that.
right,
Okay.
so we're done with that, right?
Mhm.
All
Yeah.
right.
Okay. So we won't do the worksheet.
So we need an overall position.
That's.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
I propose no.
right. I
Yep.
think we agreed with that, yeah.
Okay.
Well, we ought to vote just to. I thought we agreed to that last.
Susan, did you second that?
Yes.
Any more discussion?
No. Yes, okay,
Eugene, you can call the vote. I think we're getting
Let's
there.
vote.
ready.
Second, okay.
All right, we're voting for no support for City of Yes.
Correct.
All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Abstentions?
So how are you
Recusal?
voting? Are you, vote?
Unanimous then.
You're muted, Bo.
Those both saying
Okay,
something?
I agree, yes.
Okay, we didn't
Okay,
see
thank
it.
you.
You did vote on the other one.
Move on to 380.
Sorry?
Now we don't have to put them in pots. We can just list them in order, right? Because it won't matter. We're against it.
We're against the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, list in order. Everyone agree, just list in order?
yeah.
Yeah. And,
Okay.
Okay.
and you could, and actually, if you, given that I'm not being critical, I'm just trying to be logical. Given that very few of the sections in number 2, where we say we have specific concerns, actually have specific concerns. You could just take the few that have the specific concern and roll that into the therefore, and start the therefore right after the issues, the major broad issues section.
Oh, start issue.
Don't even have any whereas.
Basically, proposing taking out all the warehouses except for the first part, right?
Except for the first one.
Remove all whereases.
I'm fine with
We've
that.
had a lot of differences about this.
I'm fine with that.
What
I
do you
don't think the second whereas we don't really say anything at all in the second whereas.
Well, you want to maintain level of community board review, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm fine with taking out the whole seconds. So basically the bottom of page 1, all of page 2.
Yeah, but there might be some, you might make some mentions of things that are, that you want to roll over, but you can decide that.
Move it into the therefore be resolved for the appropriate proposal by proposal.
Yeah.
It's a long read at the full board.
We don't read the we don't read the whereases.
No, but there are a lot of therefores now, aren't there? They're all
You
therefores.
can just summarize them. Like, you can do a cheat sheet like Donna.
Okay.
Yes, but to the point, it is true that most people don't understand what the City of Yes is. And that's across the city. I mean, we have friends at other meetings tonight. So I do think that the full board and the public who's there deserve some understanding of how profound it is and why we're voting no. So I don't know how we do that exactly, but I think people have to understand.
That's a good point. It just requires a lot of text being added to the whereas.
No, it doesn't. It only requires, excuse me for saying that. No. All you have to do is just summarize what the individual proposals are about a little more.
And summarize what the City of Yes is. That's the thing. It's like in the beginning, because they don't know. I mean, people don't even know what it is. I think that's important.
So do you mean summarize proposal by proposal or
I think you
more
need a few
globally?
sentences right off the top. This is what the City of Yes is. Every community board is voting on it. We don't, we're voting no, and here are some specifics.
I don't think we add that in because our board is not the target. That's something you can say. Yeah, I don't think it should be part of that because you don't.
No, okay, I understand.
You just.
But I think
we're lucky if people review.
Yeah. It's just your opening when you're standing at the mic. It's not part of it.
That's what I mean. Yeah, just because otherwise it's going to mean nothing.
Otherwise there's no context, right?
Yeah.
Janine, I think you had.
Oh, yeah, I put it in the chat, but I thought just a general overview of, collapsing youth groups and a focus on commercial versus residential and a few other highlighted points would be a good way to, present it for people who haven't read anything.
Okay.
All right, that's a good
I
suggestion.
see that comment. Thank you, Janine.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
We're going to give Frederica 2 minutes because she said she wanted to say something about 388.
Thanks. In a separate time frame from working on, well, I guess, okay. The 388 thing, I think they completely underestimated in their summation the importance of the rec center. And I feel as if we should take a minute and write either a letter, which could be done after the full board meeting, or a reso. I leave it up to you guys whether you think it has to be a reso. Just reinforcing that importance to us, and also get Eric Botcher to write to them about the rec center.
Frederica, the fact that they presented the options for the ground floor and they didn't say rec center, they said they never used that term. I think it got the conversation off in the wrong direction.
Well, they called it a community/cultural space.
Yeah, they never had that. They never presented that properly in the different envisioning meetings. I agree with you, and that's why it fell off the radar.
So do you think people in the chat, Katie, were referring to the Dapolito Center? There were constant questions like, what about the Dapolito Center? Why isn't that, so people didn't even know, they didn't get it at all.
Right, so maybe just a letter and not a reso, and then we don't have to struggle to get the reso written in time for the full board meeting? We could just agree that we're gonna do a letter to this effect to them.
Letters aren't as good.
Sure.
Rezos are better. It's not a long reso, I don't think. You
Okay.
know, we can try. You want to vote on writing a reso? And
Can I just, I think the other thing that bothered me about the conversation was the generality about the design. Because we've been very, very specific about our design requirement, not specific to detail, but specific to creativity in the design of the building, and their response was very general to what they do to all RFPs, and my take on what we were asking was for them to really make it a focal point, not saying it's better or worse than any other thing that's been done, but really a focal point other than their general, we want a nice design, a good design.
Yeah.
And I feel they were dismissive of that, and Amita's comment, she's been saying it for the past 3 or 4 meetings, and I think it's really important. It's what it, you know, and the can't, all these creative, we were asking for creative solutions in here, and I didn't hear the term creative or anything that sounded like it was anything different than their high standards for what they usually put out.
They said we're always creative.
Right. So I'm raising that as that was another issue aside from the rec center that for me was an issue.
And when we refer to design excellence, we should capitalize those letters because that has real significance. That is a program.
Well, and also in the program, widening the base is the whole key to the mathematical problem. I mean, you only have a small postage stamp, of course it's gonna be tall.
Yeah, this.
The wider, the better, and that's, you know, I think there's a lot of options of overhanging, which is happening all over the place now, over the.
I think that destroyed the park. You know, so that meant they were dismissive.
They didn't solve it, a whole thing.
Take that word.
Open
Yeah.
space.
Can I just say something? They have an idea of what they want to do.
Yes.
All this envisioning.
Yeah.
You could see, we're just a box that they're checking. What nonsense was it to say, oh, we have a standardized form? What is that about, a standardized form? You know, no, this is our community, it's a special project for us, and you're telling me it's the standardized form? It's just complete nonsense.
One size fits all. Yeah.
Developer, how big the building is.
That's what we want.
We can't leave it up to develop.
We asked them to
Well, that's a
maximize
problem for the
the house. We asked them to maximize the house.
And what Carter brought up is,
To be creative. Well, I don't know that that's a mistake at all, but and ask them to be creative in doing that. You don't know if that's a mistake. But that is their.
and this DEP is like a barrier. Every time we turn around, DEP is in our face, it's a barrier. We end the meeting, are we done here?
Well, if we're gonna do a reso, we should vote on the reso for 388 Hudson.
Okay,
So-
well, here's one thing, I've been scribbling, thank you for all your thoughts. First item, CB2 reiterates that the community needs a recreation center inside the 388 Hudson Street building.
It's been asking for.
Yes, and
Demands.
we have repeatedly called for a 1 to 3 floor rec center.
No, not 1 to 3.
Multi-floor. Multi.
Okay, what is it? What we've, for 3.
Can we just agree that we'll work on it after and that the group agrees that we need a reso on the outstanding topics that they misinterpreted and not have to write it on Zoom?
We can agree, but we.
Are those the points? Are those the points you want made and we can fix them?
Are we talking about the design excellence in this also?
I have another one for that already, too.
And then I
So
think
what do
the
we
last
say?
one would be, it would be the rec center, design excellence, and the third prong would be maximizing the footprint, maximizing the building footprint.
Well, what about digging deeper? This is not the language, but just going back to DEP to get more statistics on what it is they actually need.
Well, they're
Well,
gonna.
I was building on Anita and saying, you know, to try to imaginatively, relate, relate or use the DEP space, airspace imaginatively. I don't know.
Below, whatever, every inch should be grabbed. It's for the people,
Felt like a Marxist there.
not for the pipes. I mean, the pipes will take care of themselves. We're gonna respect them.
We don't need a.
Do you want to vote on this tonight, or do you want to wait next month? They said the RFP
Tonight.
will come out in 2 months.
Tonight.
Okay, so
Earlier is better.
a three prong, reso on 388 Hudson, one prong about the rec center, one prong about design excellence in caps and creativity, and the third prong about getting more space from the DEP or using the airspace more
And can we also include in the vote that if we think of a fourth prong, we can add it after?
Night all.
Okay?
Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Recusal? Okay, unanimous.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
The meeting,
Thank
good
you.
night to everyone for staying so long.
What was, Eugene, Frederica, repeat your fourth point again, please.
I haven't thought of it yet.
Her fourth was a give me for future. Her fourth was anything else.
Okay, we reserve the right to comment further. Okay, I will write this up tomorrow morning.
We're done, Mark.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Connor. You are got a lot of staying power, buddy.
Yeah.